I'm this far from the mic.
And I'm this far from the mic.
And we're these fars from the mic. It's DigiBro and Vic the Ho once mo with DigiBros discuss Breath of the Wild. The latest Zelda title, highly relevant, almost like it just came out yesterday. Well, for me, I only just beat the damn thing, but you played this thing, how long ago did you play this damn thing?
But it's, like, initially I beat it, probably couple weeks after it came out, but I've continually played it. So I feel like a couple months ago I was still playing it. Well, maybe, I guess 6 months ago now.
This is why I wanted to discuss the game with you, because, I've just beat it for the first time, and my perspective is going to be different from somebody who's spent more time with it, as well as I think we have pretty different ways that we feel about the game.
Approach the game, yeah.
So we're going to go through this topic by topic. There's going to be a list of time codes down in the description as we go from section to section, because it's just the most easy way to organize the thoughts on the game. But the first thing we got to talk about is the world map.
That map.
It's kind of the biggest deal of the game, that it's an open world, go anywhere at any time, do as you please, big open map. How do you feel about this world map?
I mean, it's a really general way to approach that.
It's
trying to get in the mindset of how I first played the game, because it is exciting because you see the starting area on the map, to begin with, and then it's just there's nothing, because it doesn't reveal anything to you. It doesn't reveal the geography to you until you've walked through it, which is a fucking great choice, because then you can see it, but it's not on the map. So you're like, how far does it? I can see a mountain. Yeah. Is there anything beyond that mountain? What's out there? I don't know. How big is this going to be?
I'm curious, how long into the game did you have a sense of the full scale of the world? Because when I was watching other people play it like you on your Let's Plays, I just saw it as unbelievably massive open world game.
Because even though it's not that big.
It's not. And that did not take me long to figure out, because the very first thing I did was try to get a lay of the land. My mentality towards the game was like, I want to know where everything is in relation to one another. And you have these big glowing orange towers that are basically like a magnet. Like, I am drawn directly to it. And so I immediately was trying to get to each of the towers and turn them on so I could see the map, and then sort of explore the area once I had unlocked a part of it. And as you go to do that, you realize it's not as easy as it seems. It's not simply that you can rush straight to each one and immediately get it done.
There's obstacles in your path, and some of them are not obvious,
Yeah, and I think the thing that impressed me the most about this game, and this is why I wanted to talk about this first, is the topography.
Yeah. It's
the fact that so much thought was put into what you can see from where.
Yes.
Everywhere you go, there's certain things you can see from any point in the map. You can always see the guardians that you've beaten standing on top of hillsides, pummeling the castle with lasers, which is super satisfying, because it means you basically see your progress constantly.
You change the world around you.
Yes. You've changed the geography in a way that you can see forever. It's really cool that there are certain structures that are just so big you can see them from anywhere in Hyrule. But then you will look out from, let's say, a mountaintop, and you see 3 towers, and you think, okay, how do I get to each of those 3 towers? But what you don't see is what's at the base of those towers that will be some kind of unique challenge.
Exactly.
That maybe you can't do at this point in the game yet, or that's, or you don't realize that area is going to be freezing cold when you get there, So stuff like that, it caused me to, I would always be going to some landmark because I saw it, and I'd go, oh, let me go up there. That will probably be a better vantage point. And then I'd get there, and I'd be like, okay, I see 3 shrines. I'd mark each of them on the mini-map.
Yeah.
Then I'd try to head to each one. But then you realize that there's a lot of stuff that's just deliberately hidden from those exact vantage points. I would say the most obvious, perhaps even egregious example of this is the tower that's near the Lost Woods. Because there's a big skull rock on it that's blocking you from flying into the Lost Woods. It's just like a one example of just the thought put into, okay, if you're up here, what can you see? What can you do? And it causes it. My operating theory on this game is that it's not really an open world game. It's an open level. I really saw it as one level.
It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, we're already getting into immediately the fundamental differences in our approaches to the game.
Yes.
But you already have explained this better than anyone else I've ever heard talk about the game.
I'm glad.
By your approach to the game. Because you are the first person to demonstrate to me, like, what is appealing about that approach and why it's special to do it that way.
Well, see, that's the thing, because you have talked about on Digibros, or Vic and Hope, rather,
Yeah.
how you don't like to go and climb all the mountains and scope things out. You would rather run through the middle.
There's depth and reasoning to that because of the different ways I played the game through different playthroughs.
All right, explain.
Like, but you've already blown my mind with just the way that you did this. Because for me, I always take I'm more of a systematic approach to video games because I want to be consistently surprised as I go through it. You know? I want to go through levels sort of one at a time so I can experience, like, I don't want to know what's there yet, you know? I want to be 40 hours into the game and then still be surprised and not know where I'm going. And, like, seeing something in the distance the first time I was playing it almost felt like spoiling that's all that's over there.
Right.
And just the way that, because you're like, oh, I wanted to go out and get a lay of the land. I'm like, well, that's the opposite of what I wanted to do. I wanted to go one direction first and have no idea what the fuck else was out there, thinking that the game was still enormous, you know?
Right.
Like, I wanted to have that feeling of humongousness the whole time through instead of just, like, going through immediately and being familiar with it and not feeling like there's
I'll tell you,
surprise.
I think you were wise to do that. I think both ways of playing have ups and downs.
They have their merits. Because the way you're talking about that is, you know, you went and found, oh, this place is cold, I can't go here yet.
Right.
Whereas for me, going through them one at a time, when you get to the cold place, you already have the stuff you need to get through it.
Right.
And, like, that's what I never got out of the game that I didn't think it did well for me, was that when I got to these places that require certain things, I already knew how to get around it because I had already been through one direction all the way, you know? Yeah. Or I did it in the right order.
It's fascinating how different playthroughs can be because of how much is in the game. Because, for instance, here's something you probably did that I didn't. I almost never once cooked in this game.
Jesus Christ.
Never. And the reason it took me...
Depressing.
It took me more than halfway through the game to even learn how to cook. Because I had missed whatever tutorials might exist. Because if you do go through the game following the path, there is a lot of stuff there that is I would be like 75% of the way through the game and then stumble upon a guy who's like, oh, are you headed this way? I'm trying to get to Zora's domain. And then, like, you interview him about the place, and it's clear you're meant to have found this guy on the way there.
Exactly.
I did not.
I developed my theory of the right way to play the game, which I've confirmed this through listening to developer interviews of the game, because they originally designed the game with too much of a linear approach. Because they went and presented it to Miyamoto or whoever, their original build of the game, which is what... You know, it's largely what's still there.
Right.
And they said, this is too streamlined with the areas. You need to change it and make it more open. And that's when they, like, made it so you can climb fucking anything and do whatever you want. So they originally planned set paths. So that's why they're still there. And then they retroactively made it so, you know, put on all the Korok seeds and everything.
This makes a lot of sense in what the... Like, because, okay, this game... I like this game a lot, but it just feels very confused about its identity, which is why I'm excited for the sequel, because I'm hoping that they're going to, you know, rework it in such a way that they're considering what was supposed to be fun about this game.
Yeah. Because it was largely a tech demo and an experiment, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it was, we want to do something completely different, and they came up with the mechanics, and then they just went from there. You know, they came up with the world, and then they came up with making it a Zelda game. And that's the approach they took. So, like, in that regard, it makes sense that, like, dungeons and all that were the last thought, because they really focus on making the world first.
Yeah.
And then filling the world second.
So, I want to know, how did you feel about the shrines?
I mean, it's a mixed bag. Some of those shrines suck.
The test of strength ones are definitely the weakest.
They can be fun, especially if you approach them right, where if you go into one where you're not ready yet and then you come out and then you come back when you're stronger.
Right.
Because the worst way to do it is to be strong already, go in, destroy the test of strength, and then, be done with it. Because there's some that mix it up with those where, like, you're fighting a guy and the floor is water and there's no pillars to hide behind. So you have to make ice blocks come up. So it plays on the fact that you've already done this a bunch of times to let you do it in new ways to make it more interesting,
I found myself, when it comes to the shrines, I loved their existence because it's immediately... The way I approached this game was that when I realized that the way that you upgrade is through the shrines, there's no leveling up in this game.
Yeah.
Fighting enemies, and maybe this is the difference, this is why I didn't end up approaching it the way that you did, because if you go through the areas in that linear kind of way, you will have way more combat encounters, you'll have way more of, fight a bunch of enemies and get the treasure that's at the end of it. But, what you get from that is usually weapons and shields and armor. And what those things are useful for is if you're doing lots of fighting.
Yeah.
If you skip over those areas entirely, then you don't need that many weapons or shields because you're not breaking them that often because you're not fighting.
I'm going to circle back around because the first... Really, I want to talk about the first playthrough I had, how I approached it, and how I changed that perspective into the perfect way to play the game, which is linearly.
Okay.
Because the first time I played it, one of the most disappointing moments in the game for me was when I went to, I went and did the Sheikah stuff, I went to Zoro's domain, and then I went up Death Mountain. And then from Death Mountain, from fucking around and exploring, I went over these cliff sides to the, the highland that's right next to Death Mountain?
Akala?
What's that called? Yeah. The Akala Highlands. And I entered through, the ridge of Death Mountain and came in there. And then I see a shrine on top of a big pillar.
Yes.
And I just fly over to it and go in the shrine.
Uh-huh.
Inside the shrine, you just win. The challenge is over. Because you just skipped the whole challenge. Because I came in through the back, skipped the whole challenge of the level. Later, I explore the map, you reveal it. You find a guy in a shack, and he tells you about how there's this path to this skull shape on a map and all this shit, and find the eye of the skull, and it's a whole riddle. I'm like, I already fucked that because I went through the wrong way.
The thing is, that quest didn't even make sense in the first place because I did follow the riddles and stuff, but the fact of the matter is I'm going to go everywhere on the map.
Yeah.
And it's not hidden. You just run back there and you see the shrine and you go, oh, there's a shrine.
But the thing is,
let me climb this pillar and get to it.
But if you go through it on one path, then you follow a trail from where you start at that gazebo, and there's a trail, and then there's this rock ridge where it's a big tunnel with giant spiky rocks that go over it, and there's a bunch of fire lizards in there, and you gotta fight your way through this gauntlet, and then you find next to that pillar there's the guy who sells the monster parts. There's one of those shacks there, and then, climbing the pillar is kind of a bitch. So it's, all this whole experience, this crafted journey that you can go on that will be a more satisfying way to experience
this is flat out a case of something that they just broke by changing the nature of the game.
So that's why I think that some things are lost from the other approach.
I mean, I think it's a problem of... There are certain times when being able to skip everything is satisfying, and then other times where it just seems like they accidentally took the wind out of the sails of the game. And I have to wonder if it was just that there's so much shit in the game that they went, well, maybe people won't notice that a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense, it doesn't function.
And they're imagining people approaching it from their ideal perspective of how they crafted it,
Right.
They're thinking, oh, you're going to enter those highlands from the path, and then you're going to go to this place, you're going to talk to everyone, and then you're going to find out about this, and you haven't uncovered the rest of the map yet,
Yeah.
It's you already went around and covered the map before you even talked to anybody.
I think it leads to a situation where I I think the reason they can get away with that is that both ways are fun to play.
Yeah.
It is still fun to climb all the mountains and find your own way around and feel like you're kind of cheesing the game in a way.
But it for me, it leads to disappointment later. Like, there's the other part where there's, like, the tropical area with all the rain, where it's, like, raining all the time and there's waterfalls. And then deep in those sort of jungle, there's a crazy river path you go down and you fight all these lizard guys. And then you get to the giant skull. Mm-hmm. And then you fight your way in there and, like, open a chest or there's a shrine or whatever the fuck's in there. But, like, that path, you can just approach it from the back and get to the end, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, it's super cool going through that. There's all kinds of NPCs that tell you it's there. There's a whole path to get there. Yeah. I think if you get the scale of the yellow dragon when he's over the Hylian Bridge, if you get that scale and then you go down that path through the woods and find that temple, if you throw the scale in the water, then it stops the lightning in that whole region, because there's constantly lightning going on.
Right.
And, like, it makes the rain and lightning calm down. I think that's a theory based on playing the game and doing that and noticing a difference. I'm not sure that actually is true, but it seemed true from what I did and what I read and how I experienced it. I was like, because it seemed like it was raining and thundering way less when I went through there on that playthrough where I did it in that order than when I went through the first time. Because the first time I went through the first area, I did not
spend much time in the southern areas.
I went down the southern areas are like the best part of the game.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah. Oh, they're awesome. Because you can go through the Sheikah place, you go down the beach, you go around, and then you can approach that region from the back, and there's a fishing village.
Yeah.
And then, like, so there's two approaches you can go through there, which is really cool, because if you go through the bottom, it's going to be a lot harder as you fight your way to that temple, which is at the top.
I'm really curious, how much of your playthrough was climbing?
I'd say the first one was a lot of climbing. Because I was approaching it that way. Because I wanted to find all the Korok seeds up there. And I thought, like, you first approach it like, oh, these mountains are going to hide all kinds of secrets. All the shrines are going to be up in these mountains. You know, there's going to be something cool. That's the funny thing, is
it's really the opposite. The mountains are where the least stuff is.
Exactly. Because that's the afterthought, you know?
Right.
Like, the mountains, there's not much there. And it's a shittier way to get to a new area. Because you just go in and you don't see the art design that they put into approaching that area. You know?
I first started to understand what you were talking about when there's this... The Lanayru Gate, like Lanayru Mountain, right, where the dragon is on top of the mountain.
Yeah. And, oh god, that's fucking another one of the points.
So there's this path that leads to that mountain, that has a gate, and that's where you get your first Zelda memory.
Yeah.
So I had already gone down that way, but the way it's built, it's literally like a canyon built between two mountains, sort of. You could easily not even realize it's there.
Yeah.
Like, it's built into the mountains in such a way that if you were just climbing mountains, you would skip over this spot. And so, yeah, going through it is, like, kind of a level, whereas if you could just climb over it and not fight any of the guys. And so I had gone through it the first time the normal way, and then the second time by climbing. But honestly, I very rarely felt inspired to actually take the way through like you did, because I don't really enjoy the combat that much.
Yeah.
Like, I just think that the combat, like, and I understand that there's a lot of ways that you can be really creative with the combat. The way I play video games is I tend to default to whatever is the most optimal strategy, you know, like whatever is the easiest, most thoughtless, most just, I don't remember what Yahtzee called it, but there's like a word he had for like a combo that you will use every time because it's just the strongest combo and it's easy to do and it always wins.
Yeah.
And Zelda, like, it has tons of ways that you could fight enemies uniquely, but they're not forced on you. They're not like better ways. They're not going to make the battle happen faster.
Yeah.
If anything,
it's fuck around and be more interesting some of the time.
Right. If anything, it's going to be more of you going into menus, more of you like trying to test things out. You're more likely to die. And like, the thing is that this game kills you very easily. And I felt like that disincentivized experimentation in a way that bothered me.
It kills you easily if you're not doing it right, you know?
Well, that's the thing. Like, in the first area, it took me a while. Like, I did not get into this game until I got the paraglider. Yeah. Because until I had the paraglider, I kept trying to climb
tutorial. Yeah, that's another
everything.
Like that first area, I guess it might not be obvious for everyone that you're just at a tutorial stage, and you should probably just burn through it as fast as you possibly can,
right?
Because it's not that interesting of an area.
No,
like it tries to introduce you a little bit to all of the different mechanics of the game through that stage, but it's certainly like the first playthrough. I spent a lot of time in there when it's not that interesting. No. There's not that much to do.
Well, the thing that pissed me off about it was that I kept trying to like climb up ledges, and then I'd run out of strength and fall and die. And it was like,
Christ.
I'd be like, well, I just want to figure out if I can climb this ledge. But if I get punished by dying, then it makes me not want to try.
Yeah, because you need to get stronger, you know?
As soon as you get the paraglider, it immediately is like, oh, well, now I can experiment all I want because I have a failsafe if I fall. So that was immediately made the game way more fun. I think that what they needed to do, if they wanted to make it so that you were forced to do more things, just nerf the climbing a little bit.
Yeah, I was just thinking
it's
that.
So easy to climb everything in the game.
If they made it so you just couldn't do it until you were strong enough, that would have made it feel like more of an accomplishment when you actually could climb the biggest mountains. Because you get up some of them big old mountains right at the beginning of the game, and you're like, well, it took me forever to climb this because I was stubbornly throwing myself at this wall, trying to find the best way to do it. And then there was nothing rewarding up here.
The Gerudo Highlands. That's the one, right? The big, super giant step, if you will, that is cold. Like, you're in the Gerudo place, up from that. North from Gerudo, south from the Rudos.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just it's just a big fucking mountain.
A big cliff face.
I did that with only 2 stamina upgrades and no cold gear. I explored that whole area. Because
that would have sucked.
Because I mean, it's fun for me because a lot of the appeal of this game, when I play MMORPGs, my number one priority is to climb all the mountains.
Yes. Which I knew, which is why I was interested I knew you'd take the opposite approach I had to this game.
Yes.
Because you're more interested in just fucking around and running
around.
Well,
and I'm used to doing that as a way to break the game.
Yeah.
Like, I wrote this thing on my blog way back, My Sword is Unbelievably Dull, about an adventure I took through Terra Online, where there's this gigantic sky whale that flies around, and there's a lot of giant mountains in that game. You're not really meant to climb them. Yeah. But because of the way that incline surfaces work in the game, anything that's less than a 45-degree angle you can stand on. And so if you just throw yourself at the mountains and make sure you find which inclines you're able to stand on, then you can climb those mountains, even though you're clearly not supposed to because the game, the graphics kind of fuck up if you get outside the world. You can do the same thing in Breath of the Wild. There's a lot of mountains where it seemed like you probably aren't supposed to be able to climb this, but because, just in the effort of art design, sometimes there's slightly less steep slopes, and like Link might still be doing a climb animation, but if you press B and he stands and doesn't slide off the cliff, you recover your stamina.
Yeah. Because you could cheese your way through a lot of that stuff.
Oh, everything.
Which is what I was
always
doing.
Only ever did 3 stamina upgrades in the whole game. God. I climbed everything, Like, when I got the 3rd one, I felt like I had too much stamina and I didn't need it anymore,
I didn't do a lot of stamina upgrades,
Yeah,
I'll see people playing, I'll, look at...
And they have, 2
play, they have, fucking, ridiculous amounts of stamina.
But, and because to me, it was like, well, I want to get all hearts because I fucking die so easily, and...
how much did you delve into the armor upgrading and getting
We'll get to all that.
Okay.
We're doing this sectionally. Right. We're still in the world map shrines section. But sort of what I'm getting to here is that the reason, when I got off the tutorial area and I saw the towers and I realized that that you only need weapons because you've broken your weapons. You only break your weapons if you fight.
Yeah.
So weapons and armor, not that appealing to me because I know I can get by without them unless I need to fight, which I expected to need to fight a lot more. I thought the game was going to put me in way more combat scenarios, especially after the trip to Zora's Domain, and we'll get to that later, but that's the only really forced combat section.
Gauntlet. Yeah, that's the whole level.
Yeah, and I thought there was going to be something like that for every single approach. There wasn't. Yeah. So... I never found myself in dire need of weapons and armor.
Yeah.
I just needed hearts.
Well,
so like the shrines were my main like objective was get to the shrines, and it's a super good reward because when you get to a shrine you can teleport to it, and you don't even have to beat the shrine, you just have to get there. And so it's super rewarding if you decide to run into an area that you haven't unlocked the tower, like you're in a totally mysterious place and you're just like, you're like, how far can I make it? Like how far can I get in without needing to upgrade? Like, because sometimes you go to a place and it's cold and you go, okay, well, I can't progress here because I don't have enough cold resistance, or it's hot and you don't have heat resistance. Like, you go to some places and there's a natural thing capping you. But if you're going somewhere that's like the enemies are really strong and you shouldn't be here, but you're like, I'm going to try to do it anyways. Yeah. And then you find a shrine and you unlock it, now you can teleport back to that area. So as soon as you get stronger later in the game, you're not going to have to redo that whole approach you just did. Yeah. You can just teleport straight there. I love that element of it. And I also like that, to get the power up, you basically have to solve an unrelated puzzle in a way. It's like, I understand why the shrines would bother some people. The fact that they're all the same, basically, the same assets, same design. But like, to me, the point of them was just to be like, all right, you made it all the way here. Now, earn your badge, so to speak. Yeah. But like, getting to the shrine was enough of a reward in itself that it was worth going to that.
Yeah, and that's why some of them just give you a reward when you get there. Because like the path there was supposed to be the payoff. Mm-hmm. It's about the journey, not the destination. That's the whole philosophy of the entire game, Yeah. The philosophy of the game is about the journey and not the destination. Mm-hmm. You see that through the shrines, the ones that give you a reward as soon as you get there. And I wanted to circle back around and talk about that mountain with the blue dragon on it that you had talked about. Because you talked about there was the path that you could just totally miss. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Where you got to go through, you find the memory, you fight a Lionel, you go up the mountain, and it's fucking... Like, if you take that path from beginning to end, it is an epic journey, especially if you fight the Lionel. Which at that point in the game... I
did not fight any Lionels.
Yeah, at that point in the game, I felt like you're more meant to just avoid him and say like, I'll come back here later and get him, But there's also, you could totally miss that. But if you talk to everyone in Kakariko Village, I do believe there is someone who tells you about that area. And then you go and find it, Like, there's so much in the game where there's an NPC that tells you of a shrine.
I mean, that's basically what all the NPCs exist to do, is to tell you about something you can find.
It's cool when you do it that way, but you can spoil yourself on it. Like, there's one NPC in Kakariko Village that says, look at the mountain, and you see the 3 trees, and if you line up the trees, then where they point to will be where the shrine is. And, like, I found that guy after I had already fucked around on the mountain and found the shrine. Right. And I went through and fucked around on that mountain a super long time, didn't have cold resistance, just muscled through it, and had a really shitty time running around in the blinding snow, and found that shrine on my own, And I didn't even know that the blue dragon was on the mountain. That was the last dragon I found. I had no idea until later in the game. I think I had looked it up because it was like I was close to the end and I was just trying to get all the dragon scales into the fountains or whatever. And then I looked it up and I'm like, oh, it was on the mountain that I didn't fucking explore the right way because I just screwed around on it.
It's funny. First of all, I didn't even know that dragon scales were like a whole mechanic.
Yeah, you got when you find there's a shrine related to each dragon, and then you drop the dragon scale in the water of the shrine.
How many dragons are there?
Like there's 3.
Okay, so I've seen them all.
There's the yellow, the red, and the blue.
That dragon, I just skipped that mountain because at that point in the game when you first find it, you don't have cold resistance. So I only went back at the very end when I was like, I'm going to try to find some extra shrine. Because, basically this game gave me no trouble at all until the boss of the Gerudo camel, the camel boss.
All the bosses were pretty easy.
Except for that one, because you basically have to do perfect dodges every single time to hurt him. And, again, I had done no cooking. I had done no, prep. I didn't have any food on me when I got to the boss. Like, I barely had to eat in the game. like, so that was the first boss that gave me any trouble. So I, like, you know, decided to go and do some more prep, like maybe learn to cook and go find some extra shrines and clear out any areas I hadn't been to yet. So, you know, I just went to Zora's Domain, climbed the Zora Mountain, flew across to Mount Lanayru. There's the dragon. Did not go through the mountain at all.
It sucks. You fought the dragon and everything. You purified it.
Yeah, I purified the dragon
because you're meant to find that earlier in the game, and then it tells you that there's other dragons.
I mean, I saw the other two dragons just on my path.
Because you would have found them before if you were exploring. Right. Whereas if you went through, like, if you did all the shrines in, like, counterclockwise order from the beginning and went through all the different regions, then you would come across that before you ever had a chance to see the other dragons, and it would tell you, like, oh, there's this stuff, and you'd be like, oh, whoa, I can't wait to find this, you know?
Yeah.
Because it, like, that event is kind of like this whole boss battle kind of thing where you're flying around and shooting it and stuff, cool. And, like, you don't do that with the other dragons. The other ones, you just see them, you know? Which is majestic when it first happens, but it's like, these are things I start to feel playing it multiple times when I think, like, if I could have the perfect vanilla experience of this game, the perfect virgin experience, you know, what would it be?
Well, let me tell you, like, as much as I appreciate how the game would make sense that way, at the same time, what it did offer me, playing it my way, was some of the most unique approaches to a game that I've ever played. Because, like, with my fixation being the towers and the shrines, like, my main thing was, how do I get to each of these towers? And the reason I spent so much time in the Gerudo Highlands is that you can't find that fucking tower. It's not visible from anywhere on the map except for the Gerudo city.
Yeah.
So it's designed in such a way to tell you, like, don't come over here. But, like, instead of me taking it as... Because, first of all, I just wanted to know where each tower was in a map sense. Like, it wasn't that I went to each one right away. It's that I would find it in the distance, mark it on the map. And it was very important to me to have them all marked, and I didn't have that one marked. So I ran around that area for like a solid hour. Could not find it. But what I did find was... You know, I jumped off a cliff, landed in some animal bones, found a weird shrine in the desert, fucking found all this shit that I was like... You know, ran up against the edge of the world, found out there was an edge of the world, you know.
There's quite an awkward L that goes around, like, the north and, west side of the map.
Yeah. And, you know, because I'd been exploring, I had found my way out to the island where you have to use no weapons or whatever, which I did not even do, because I got there really early in the game, and I did not go back.
It's kind of the same regardless of how far in the game you are, because it takes everything away from you. So, like,
well, if you have more hearts, though.
I mean, hearts help.
But like, I had like 3 or 4 hearts.
It's a fun, like, mid-game challenge, you know?
But yeah, I had, you know, I'd found all kinds of stuff, and it was always exciting to find that stuff. Like, so for me, like, the final boss of the game was that Gerudo Highlands Tower. Like, finding that was, like, you know, I had found all the other ones. And, again, it's always so interesting when you get there and you realize how, like, the Akala one is extremely hard. You know, it's like you have to dodge all these guardians.
Yeah, that one's fucking cool.
All kinds of shit leading up to it. And there's no way to easily cheese it. Yeah. Like, there is a kind of, like, landing strip platform in the back of the place that you can get to from a mountain. But you still have to dodge guardians and get up there, and once you get to the top, it's like covered in the murky shit, and it's hard to get up to the thing. So, like, you know, solving those little puzzles was always fun, and but it very much was like, once I had done it, once I'd unlocked all the towers, uncovered the whole map, I had little desire to continue doing anything other than finishing the game.
Thing, you know, certain ways you approach it, you just feel like, all right, I'm done.
Which is kind of fine by me. I spent a lot of fucking time on this game. Like, it was not there's no way to play it that is short other than being so skilled you could beat Ganon with 3 hearts or something.
Or if you just skip a lot of shit, you know?
Yeah,
you just don't explore that hard.
I mean, for me, like, you know, getting strong enough to really be competitive in the game, I had to go to a lot of shrines, you know? I think I did about 50 in my run.
Yeah.
You know, I went all over the place. I focused on, well, we'll get into other parts, but yeah, like, for me, definitely the world map was my favorite thing about the game. Like, seeing what was visible from what angles, realizing new like, getting somewhere and realizing it's not what it looked like from a distance, trying to get to the towers and the shrines. But because of the fact that most of the actual quests, most of the unique things in the game are minute and small and hidden. They're not, like, you don't find them from on top of the mountains. You find them by going through the levels, by walking around, you know? And like, as a result, at the end, I felt like, okay, I know there's lots of stuff out there, but if I want to find it, I'm going to have to scour through this fucking world.
I felt the same way, because by the end of it, I had like 95 shrines or something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I feel like I've fucking explored this whole place. I feel like I've gone high and low and all around, and I haven't found the rest of these shrines. Like, I don't want to run around and dig for these shrines, you know?
Bomb every wall in the game.
Which is an approach I've taken on a more recent playthrough. Was I printed out a physical map of the game with all the shrines on the map. And from that map, like, I'm trying to play, like, without the game map so much and more of the physical map. Sort of like I did the same thing with Wind Waker, where I had a physical map of the islands that I drew as I played the game. Waker. Yeah, because in Wind Waker you can find the sea scrolls that like reveal the map to you. But yeah, it's a bitch. So I drew a physical map of the whole game as I discovered everything. For Breath of the Wild, I have a printed physical map with all the shrines on them, because if you just have a map with where the shrines are, it still doesn't tell you how to get to them, you know? Like, if there's a quest, you still have to do the quest. So it's like, I started systematically going through each region, because I think the coolest approach for me that I've found is you approach the region from the front, and you go through, you do everything there is to do, and then you move on, you know? Everything that you can possibly do. And if you have a map of the shrines, makes it even easier to do that, because you know generally what direction you need to go in to find what you're looking for.
We'll get into this more when we get to the side quest section, but like, you're playing it like an MMO.
Well, and yeah, it's playing it like an MMO, and it's also playing it like a Zelda game.
Yeah.
Because I think the design philosophy they went for, like, if you look at Twilight Princess, generally the structure of the game, you enter a new area, you go to the town, you learn about the town, you talk to everyone in the town, and then you know, go through some sort of trial there, you move on to, like, you know, the area before the dungeon, and then you get the dungeon, you complete the dungeon, and you move on to the next area.
Right.
So like this one, if you approach Zora's domain from the front, the structure of that is the same as an area in Twilight Princess, you know? Like, you go in through the front, you do whatever trials to get to the town. In the town, you systematically go and you do all the shrines around it. Or you go... I guess it's really you have to go to the town, do the objective there, go to the beast to beat that, to change the region, so now that you can access all the shrines. But basically, if you play through it that way, it feels more like a level than it does an open world game, you know? It feels like, there actually are 7 dungeons in this game.
Right.
They're just countries. You know, the country is a dungeon. It's structured like a dungeon.
I think that's an interesting way to think about it.
Like, the beast is the boss, or the mid-section.
And I really think all they had to do was make climbing less easy. Yeah. It's like, because I wouldn't even mind, like... Because there's different levels of things to climb. Like, there are some things that are smaller and don't take that much to climb. Some things that are bigger. I don't know if they just didn't account for the fact that you could cheese the elevation levels and stuff. Like, because, again, I only had to upgrade twice to climb every fucking mountain in the game. If I had gotten to a mountain and realized I couldn't climb it, I would have said, okay, noted, coming back to this later, and gone to do something I could do. It's just that the game never locked me down like that. You know, by like the halfway point, I had climbed everything.
And like it's notable that the game, you know, the philosophy of the game is letting you do whatever you want. You know, it's the classic. Oh, Shigeru Miyamoto played the game, and the first thing he did was climb a tree, and he just climbed trees for hours. That's what they say about the first build of the game, which. I hate Miyamoto sometimes because I think he ruins video games
all the time
because he doesn't understand what video games are and why they're fun. He'd rather make pictures. And
I think he understands exactly what makes them fun.
He's like a fucking autistic savant or something. But like,
All right, well, let's move on from the world map and the shrines. Let's talk about the main quest and story. So the main quest of this game is you gotta get the 4 guardians on your side so you can beat Calamity Ganon at the end. And all of the story happens within those quests.
Yes.
First of all, the way that the game seems to pitch it to you, and I don't know how they fucked this up, because it's weird. Mm-hmm. You go to Kakariko Village. It's kind of on the right side of the map. You unlock, like, you have to go there first. That's like, you're told explicitly, go to Kakariko, talk to this old lady. Turns out she's a lolly. Mega cute. You go from there to this other village. Well, no, I meant there's an old lady. First, you go to the old lady in Kakariko. She sends you to the lolly. Then you come back to Kakariko. And then it's like, all right, here's where the 4 beasts are. One of them is pretty close to you. And the other 3 are forming a counterclockwise circle to the left.
Yeah.
So it seems really obvious that you should go in that order. Yeah. And yet that's not the case. Clearly, the Ritos are supposed to be first, then the Zoras, then Death Mountain, then the Gerudos.
Wait, who's... Oh, the birds?
The birds are supposed to be first. Because the bird place is by far the easiest, has the less going on, and when you get to the end of the game and it shows the 4 guys, they show up in that order. It goes Rito, Zora, Goron, Gerudo.
That's interesting, because I always thought of it as Zora, Goron, Rito...
That seems obvious from looking at the map, right?
I've been really trying to find the perfect way to go through the game.
Okay, because here's what I did. I went to Zora's Domain first because it seemed obvious. Mm-hmm. And the approach to Zora's Domain is a somewhat challenging gauntlet. Like, because... And I was shocked they didn't do more of this in the game, because when you're going there, you cannot climb there. You cannot just cheese your way to the place.
Which is cool.
You show up and there's a perpetual rainfall going, and when it's raining, you can't climb sheer cliffs.
Yeah.
And so you have to go through this central path to the village, and it's this long, winding road where you fight a fuckload of enemies. They have lightning powers. It's pretty hard for being this early in the game.
Did you do it first?
Yeah, I did Zora first. All right. So I did this whole approach. And I thought it was really cool because, again, I had not been forced into combat yet. Like, I had been avoiding combat. I'd been climbing mountains. I'd been taking circuitous routes everywhere, exploring, going to shrines. And, like, I had figured by this point that there is some gatekeeping. Because, like, if you go to an area and the enemies are really strong, you tend to run away. Like, that was, how I did it.
I was wondering about this because do you know how the difficulty in the game works?
No, I did not.
It's like Oblivion. The difficulty scales to your equipment and your like shrine level, basically.
That can't be true because there's different types of enemies in different places.
Yeah, but those enemies will get upgraded. If you go back to an older place, it's literally scaled.
Does that only happen on the blood moons?
No.
When it respawns everybody?
Maybe it does. I wasn't sure how
that would
it
make
works.
sense.
Like, I'm not 100% sure on how it works.
That would explain why the blood moons are even a thing.
It scales with your gear. Like, if you have a bunch of super strong weapons, then it will give you super strong guys.
Because the thing is, like, when I was starting off, I was exploring kind of randomly. And when I tried to go into Hyrule Field, there was Lizalfos there. And the Lizalfos were way harder than the Moblins I'd been fighting. So I kind of just, like, fucked off and didn't go into Hyrule Field.
With all the enemies, I mean, there are certain enemies, like, if you might find Lizalfos harder, but, like, they all have the different colors. Mm-hmm. So if you go back to an area, especially in Hyrule Field, like, if you go later in the game, the white bokoblins will be there because they're like the strongest ones.
It's really
funny.
Like
the same thing with the Lynels. The Lynels will go up in color up to like gold or something.
I had no fucking idea.
One. Yeah,
I fucking totally didn't spend any time in Hyrule Field at all.
Yeah,
like, I didn't.
That was kind of a sad thing is that there wasn't much to do there. And I really felt like this should have been the central place you go back to.
It was weird because it was only at the end of the game that I finally went and explored it because I was looking for more shrines.
And because there's the fucking laser guys everywhere.
Found, right, because it seems terrifying. Because like the first thing I did when I got to Hyrule Field was climb the tower.
Yeah.
And I had to dodge all these fucking guardians. It was super hard. And like... So I was like, all right, fuck Hyrule Field. This is clearly just where the castle is. So I'm going to go to Kakariko. I'm not going to fuck around here. I come back at the end of the game. There's 3 stables there. And I'm like, what were these 3 stables for? Like, what exploration was I meant to do from these?
Because you're supposed to, like, come out of the regions, go down the road, you know? Yeah,
and people are telling me things that would have been helpful way farther back. And yet, literally, if you just stay on the roads, it seems to be the way the game is like designed around,
that's how
which is
it's
really
designed.
Bizarre.
And, like, the horses, so open. Because it's like, there's a big emphasis if you take the path on your horse. And, like,
I used the horse maybe 3 times in the entire game.
If you fucked around and went through the mountains all the time, you barely use the horse. Like, you don't give a shit about your horse. If you approach it through the path,
because you have to constantly stop and go climb something, and you're like, well, what am I going to run back to my horse? Like I can teleport.
Did you know that if you go to a stable, you can just ask them and they'll teleport the horse to the stable?
I had to do that the few times I used the horse.
But it's like, you know, you're meant to come out of the country on your horse, go to the stables, you know. Each stable, there's a recipe posted on the walls so you can learn to cook by looking at the walls of the stables.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
I did not
read. There's unique recipes posted on walls throughout the entire world where you can learn how to do it. I found a couple,
but, like, I just never needed to cook because I didn't fight enough. Like, that's the thing. So many of the mechanics make sense if you go through the levels linearly, but they don't if you climb shit.
But with the cooking, it's like, you could make elixirs to keep cold resistance up, and food to have cold resistance. And
but you can also...
How did you resist the cold? Just through armor?
Okay, for one thing, you can carry a torch. Well, if you have cold resistant armor, you don't get affected by cold.
Yeah.
So, like, once I had the cold
that's a funny thing because it just destroys the mechanic. Like, the mechanic is gone. It's like, there was cold, I have the cold armor.
Now it's gone.
It's gone.
We'll get into this more later when we talk about weapons and armor, but every time I got to a town, I just immediately bought the full armor set. Like, because that was all I thought my money was needed for. Like, exactly. I wasn't spending money on food. I wasn't spending money on, like, crap that they had at the stores. I was just go to the place, buy the armor. Now I can withstand. And, like, granted, because I did the Rito place second, I didn't have cold-resistant armor till I got there. And I had done some crazy cold shit. Yeah. But I would
going to the mountain to get there is awesome. You know?
I would just eat through food supplies while exploring.
Or just hold a flaming sword.
Hold something, on fire. You know, there's lots of ways around it, which is cool in itself. Yeah. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining too much about this stuff because I liked the freedom. Yeah. It's just that the freedom caused me to burn through the game so quickly that I didn't feel the need to do any of the extra side stuff because it didn't seem like it would help with the main. I mean, I obviously beat the game without doing all that stuff.
And that's another thing. I think a second playthrough is always the best way to do it because the first time you're wanting to experience everything new. You're just like, I want to get to the next thing. I want to see what's there. If I did
a second playthrough, it would have to be on the higher difficulty. Yeah. That I think you have to get the DLC to even play.
Yeah, the Master Quest.
But, like, because the thing is that I think that in order to make the game be open-ended in a way where you could do everything in whatever order, they reduced the difficulty of the important things.
Well, but it's also that the difficulty scales with you.
Yeah, but the important, like, the bosses...
But yeah, the bosses should have been harder.
Like...
The dungeon should have been bigger, you know?
Like... Well, we'll get to that later, but, like, it's just the fact... Actually, no, we're in the main quest. So, yeah, we'll talk about the dungeons. Like, I wasn't bothered by the size of the dungeons because each of them is basically just a puzzle challenge.
Yeah. And it's just 4 shrines put together, you know?
Yeah, and I just saw them as a nice little way to change up the style of gameplay, which is the most notable thing about them. Like, most of the game is running around and climbing shit and doing things in this open world. It's basically an open world game, and I think that a lot of people were really disappointed with the dungeons and their length and the number of them because they're thinking of it as a Zelda game.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not, though.
Which is why I was emphasizing,
not that style, anyway.
It still is a Zelda game if you look at it as each country is a dungeon, you know?
Yes.
But
you have to play it that way.
Like, the Zelda game designers, you know, it's the fucking same people who made all the other games, you know. They're still designing in that philosophy, but they designed it that way and then they went and fucked it, you know?
Yeah. So, like, when I got to each of those things, like, I saw it as this is just the capstone of my exploration. Yeah. I went through all this trouble exploring this area to get here, and now I'm just doing, like, this one last feat. because I didn't view it as if you play Ocarina of Time or something, there's the dungeons and then there's the stuff between the dungeons. Like you don't really feel like you're doing that stuff because it's fun in and of itself. It's just getting you to the next dungeon. Whereas in this game, it's like the dungeon is just the cherry on top of the exploration.
Think about it as approaching Zora's domain for the first time. You go into Zora's domain, everything's frozen. In Ocarina of Time, right? Everything's frozen. You go through the ice cave. Mm-hmm. You beat the boss there, and then everything unfreezes.
Right.
That is how the regions of this game are designed.
Yes, and I like that about it. It's just that like sometimes the build up was not that special. So like so for instance, I did Zora domain first.
Yeah.
And then I tried to go to Death Mountain, but it just seemed too hard. Cause like, there was the heat mechanic was immediately apparent. There was the enemies seemed stronger to me. So I decided, okay, maybe I'm supposed to do this next, but let me go explore the other side of the map. So then I went to the Rito Village, and I just kind of did it without trying.
The Rito Village really feels like it was like
it's supposed to be first.
Down. I don't know.
It is definitely supposed to be first because there's so little of it. It's so easy. The Zora's domain is way harder, including the boss. Like the boss of Zora took me like it took me a bunch of tries. Yeah. The Rito boss I beat on my first try. I skated through the dungeon. I think it might even have fewer things in it, like fewer things you have to activate. It's a less complex mechanic because you just make the wings go up and down as opposed to the trunk going in like 12 different directions that it can go. It's just all around way easier. So I really think it was meant to be first.
Like if you approach Zora's domain last, because a lot of the enemies in the game scale with you in difficulty, will all those enemies be hard as fuck when you get there?
That's a good question. But Gerudo is definitely meant to be last.
Yeah,
it's so like tucked away.
It feels and because it has the cold mechanic and the heat mechanic. Right. So it's like it seems like it's a region that's meant to test all the skills that you learn.
But like if you do them in the order of Rito, Zora, Goron, Gerudo, each one will be more complicated and more difficult than the last. So that's why I think it's meant to be that way.
You'd have to come from Kakariko Village through Hyrule Field.
That seems to be how it's supposed to be.
Hyrule Field again.
Because you'd go through the north end and all this. Because like I think their idea was you would come up through the south end of Hyrule Field. You can't go left because Guardian's over there. You go right. You head down the bottom right area, cross the bridge, and then you go to Kakariko through the dueling peaks. Because it tells you that they're through the peaks. Yeah. You know? But you don't really have to take through the peaks to get there. You can just go right over everything.
Fuck around and do whatever.
So you're meant to go to this lower area, then go to that other place, come back to Kakariko, go across Hyrule Field from the north, and get to the Rito Village. Yeah. And then I'm not sure really what your best method is to get from there to Zora's domain, but like I know it's supposed to be that order because that's the way they play out at the end of the game when they all shoot their lasers at Ganon. And like it was really weird and disappointing when I got to the Rito Village and it was so easy because the lead up to it is just that you do a little target practice.
It's the lamest region. It's like the people are cool, the town is cool, but there's just nothing there, you know?
Yeah.
It's just this empty hole.
It just felt like such a step down from the Zora area. And
the Gerudo place is awesome, you know? Right.
So, like... So, I thought...
I'm really invested. Now I want to play the game again so I could do it in that order. Because I'm like, what if you went to Kakariko, and then you went down the beach, and then you came up through the tropical place with the rain and stuff, and then you went and did that area, and then you went and crossed the field. I'm like, that's a fucking cool route to go.
It makes a lot of sense because when you get to the village with the Lolly sensei, like, there's a girl who tells you that she wants you to kill the enemies on the beach. So if you were to get to that village and immediately go down the beach, come up through the wetlands, and then go back into Hyrule Field,
shit.
Yeah, that would make perfect sense. Yeah. It's really a game like where you kind of have to make your own fun in a lot of ways,
but that's part of. Let's get around to this game being fucking great, because the fact that we can approach it like that in all these different ways and think about these theories is what I love about the game. Like, I just wish in terms of longevity.
Like, it's a confusing dilemma, because on the one hand I like the freedom because it allowed me to play this game in ways that I never would, that are entirely my own. I kind of expressed myself. I played it my way. But in some ways, I wish I was more forced to play it a different way, because I think that there are just so many more rewarding systems that I didn't engage with. And like,
that's the thing. That's exactly what I'm saying.
I want you as a game designer to assume that you're smarter than me and that you can force me to do things that I will find more fun than what I think is going to be fun for myself, because, again, there's so many systems I didn't engage with, so many secrets I didn't even bother trying to find because it seemed unnecessary. But, like, so the Zora's Domain, story-wise, was really interesting because, first of all, you meet the prince, who's a really fun character. He's this cheeky, ridiculous guy. You have this long stretch of getting to Zora's Domain, so when you get there, it feels really epic. It looks cool. It's super unique architecturally. I love the Zora. And then you find out that all the old people here hate you because you were... They blame you for, what's her name, Mipha? For Mipha's death. I loved that narrative idea. That, like, because the Zora are long-lived, there's different generations of them. And the younger ones all just think you're a hero. Yeah. They're just like, oh, you're Link? That's badass. And then the older people are all like, fuck you. It's your fault Mipha's dead. And they got a statue for her and everything, but the king doesn't blame you. So, like, I felt some emotional pull. And I'll say, the story in this game is mostly whatever.
Yeah. It's an afterthought.
It's Zelda, like... which is fine. I way prefer the story in this over fucking Twilight Princess, where you have to sit through 80 hours of bullshit cutscenes with shit dialogue that is so fucking boring. Dude, I hate Twilight Princess, Victor. I hate that game. I played like 7 hours of it recently, and I couldn't stand it. I hated every minute of it.
He's gotta get through the wolf shit, man.
The wolf shit is so bad.
It's such a shame that drags the game down if you're not... Because, like, for me, I can play the game again, and I've memorized those sections, and I can do it easy,
It's not just that, though. I hate the cutscenes, and I hate that you have to listen to...
Just skip the cutscenes. Play the game for the gameplay.
I don't think you can skip the cutscenes.
You can mash a button to get through
it. They're all the time.
It's the best game ever.
Loved that in this game, every cutscene was skippable. You don't even have to engage with most of the story. Like, everything you learn about Zelda, totally optional. Go find a memory if you give a shit. I did not find even half of the memories in my playthrough.
Ah, man.
I mean, they were cool, the ones I did find, because Zelda's super moe in this game.
She's super cool.
But, like...
It's great. That's, like, my favorite part of the story is what they do with Zelda through the memories, because they make this Zelda a subversion of previous Zeldas.
Talk about it. We're in the main quest story section.
This is actually probably the only fucking part of the story I give a shit about, because it's the only thing that's really interesting to me, is that it shows, like, it kind of subverts the character that Zelda usually is, because this Zelda wants to be the hero. Like, you find out through her backstory that, like, she wants to save Hyrule, but knows that Link has to save Hyrule, and she can't do it. She's literally taken out of, like, because he is the destined hero,
Right.
She is not... She has to help Link do this, but she can't do it herself. Through these cutscenes, you get a sense that Zelda resents Link because she wants to be the one who saves Hyrule instead of him,
Yeah.
Which is, to me, is fucking cool, because it entertains the idea that, like, Zelda, like... This Zelda wants to be the main character of this game, but she literally can't. Like, it's destiny that Link is the hero, right? And she has no choice.
She spends a lot of time, like, cursing the gods for not speaking to her.
Like, she's cursing the gods for not being given this role where she can do what she wants to do,
Yeah.
Which is very interesting, because just historically, Zelda's always had to be the kidnapped one in the backseat, and Link saves the day, And this is Zelda, like,
she was Sheik,
being self-aware. Yeah. But still, she had to... Her role as Sheik was to empower Link to save the day.
Right.
Like, that's what she had to... Link was the one who had to go into the temple. Link was the one who had to find all this stuff. Zelda's role was to help him get there as the Triforce of Wisdom,
Yeah.
She doesn't get to be the hero that she wants to be in this game.
This game might do the best job of presenting her as a Triforce of Wisdom, because she literally is obsessed with learning and science. Exactly. I hadn't even thought about that.
And being a princess and wanting to, like, be a leader of her world, her country. Yeah. Like, she actually gives a shit and, like, is actively trying to save her kingdom,
Yeah. Zelda is great in this game. She's ridiculously adorable. Her personality is just like, let's make the most moe fucking character ever. Yeah. The most eminently likable, everyone's waifu fucking character imaginable. But this game is leaden with waifus, by the way. Oh, yeah. The waifu quotient is off the chain.
Fucking hella waifus.
And I mean, Mipha is like unambiguously in love with you, and people make sure you know it as often as possible.
Definitely Zelda's like, this franchise has always been a harem.
It's always been a harem.
And like this one definitely is.
I've known that since the first time I found porn of the series when I was 14, and it was just Link going through all of Ocarina of Time fucking all the girls, Jesus and I Christ. Went, oh, now I understand why there's so many waifus in this fucking game.
It's always been a harem series in a bizarre way.
It's fucking hilarious. Yeah. But yeah, in this game with the Mipha plot, I thought I was into it. I was into the fact that she's been dead for 100 years, that the Zoras are pissed off at you about it. Like, it gives it the sense of history, the sense of weight, like Link has done things in the past, you know? Yeah. I liked all that. Then I went to the Rito place, and the Ritos are like...
It's not much.
There's no story there. Like, they're fighting with the Guardian. You know, oh, the thing's gone haywire and it's tormenting us. Yeah. Like, there's a little subtlety of, like, the idea that, like, a lot of the dads of the village are dead or have been injured from fighting.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's kind of a thing like that. I wish there had just been an outright war going on. Like, if they were going to go with that angle,
that
like,
been cool. Yeah.
Have it so that there's, like, something more tragic happening than just the thing has gone against them. And, like... You fly over to the area where you do the training, and you meet this guy who's just like, who are you? I guess if you can shoot some targets, then I'll help you out, which it takes 5 seconds. Yeah. It is not difficult
at all. You're at the
and then he's like, all right, I guess I'll take you up. And you're like, okay, like there's no story here. That's why I think it had to have been meant to be first, because it's so disappointing coming off of Zora's Domain to be like, wow, this place had no story. I don't feel endeared to the Rito. The king is just a big owl with no personality. I don't even remember much about the guy who helps you. Like, he just kind of flies you up there, and then you're in the boss, and it was not a hard level, and I was just like,
Dude is just a douchebag in the past. He's like, I hate Link because I'm an asshole.
I like that guy. I liked his voice in Japanese.
Whatever.
I assume that you switched to Japanese as fast as possible like I did.
I think I did.
Because the English voice acting was... Just very
just take the voice acting back out of Zelda. Like, just take it back out. I don't need it. It's not helping.
The Japanese voices were interesting because I didn't love them, but it sounded like they were doing like a stage play. Like, everybody acts in like a very grandiose fashion as if they were on stage. I think that might have been deliberate. But especially the Rito guy. Like, I loved the way that he delivered his performance, even though, like, the acting is kind of awkward and stiff, but not in the sense that, like, it's bad acting, just that, like, they were deliberately doing something weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, his character's not as interesting as Mipha was. And, like, really all of the Guardians are kind of under-delivered on. Because, like, when you get your first memory, all of them are there. Like, it's Zelda and the whole crew, and they're all there, but most of the memories are just Zelda, like, just Zelda and Link. So... I never felt like I learned enough about these guys to really care about them that much.
A whole lot. I mean, some of them have more of the guys in there, but it depends on which ones you find.
I never found a
still
second
not
one that
much,
had them.
You know. That's why they've since added DLC that explores that more. But like, I haven't done the DLC.
Me neither.
Which is good because we don't have to talk about it.
It's dolk.
Which I should, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean. I understand that, like, most gamers have at this point accepted DLC as a fact of life. I haven't, because I've only just started playing modern video games, and I won't even think about something like that. Like, I'm used to the tradition of I beat a game, and then I don't think about it again for the next 10 years. Like, I don't hear a DLC is coming out and go, oh, let me fire up the game I beat 6 months ago. Like, I don't have context to care anymore, you know? I've moved on to other things. So
I bought the DLC, but I wanted to get through the game again to have, like, to experience
it,
would
you feel like you're still playing it
again. Yeah.
But yeah, so
I'm not just jumping in and being like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. I don't give a shit.
So, like, you know, I I don't mind that the story is minimal. I don't mind that the areas are, you know, like, not primarily story driven, but like the Zora domain was exactly what I wanted. Yeah. It was exactly the right amount of, like, the characters who were there were connected to the person from before. There was like this awesome sense of progression of beating that whole area, getting to the town. Then you have to climb the mountains around the town and like collect arrows from. You get to collect the lightning arrows from around the fucking Lionel, so it's like a sneaking mission. Like,
cool. Or you can fight the Lionel. That's a great example of choice, is that you could just fight that motherfucker if you want.
We talked about that on the new PCP that's coming out probably the same day as this episode. We talked about the game, and I think it was Nate who said he just didn't No, it was Tom. He said he didn't realize you were supposed to sneak around it, so he just fought it.
Nice.
And it was super satisfying because he spent time. Like, it took a ton of tries, but he eventually did it. Cooked all this food, got all this gear, and like, you know, really prepared, which again is a thing that seems like the game is meant to make you do, but since it never forces you to do it, I just didn't. And I mean, part of me is like, I'm robbing myself, but at the same time, like, I get a sick pleasure out of beating a game the optimal way, out of doing it as fast and as easy as possible, you know? So like, if I'm not forced to do that, then it might not happen. And there are other games that do a great job of forcing you to learn the mechanics, of forcing you to engage all the way if you want to beat the game. Yeah. And, you know, that's
this one's all about choice, you know, just you do it however you want, sometimes at the sacrifice of it being as fun, you know.
The Goron area was pretty good. I would say I wish that Death Mountain was like larger, that there was more to explore there.
It's just kind of like the story beat through it, the little sneaking section, and then it's just like, you're done.
Well, and the weird thing about it is, much like Zora's Domain, there is a like intricate path with lots of enemies you can take to get in, but you don't have to this time. So with Zora's Domain, it was like I was forced to fight all those guys. With Death Mountain, it was like, these encounters seem really scary, and I don't want to have to go grind food, so I'm just gonna find a way around it. Yeah. That's the other thing, is that like, you know, I'm sure that gathering all your materials and fighting your way through an area would be really satisfying, but at the same time, if you know you don't have to do it, you can skip the boring part of that, which is the grind, which is getting enough money to buy enough materials to make the food, learning the recipes, cook the stuff, and like
probably not buying the materials most of the time. You would have
or grinding enemies to get materials to do all that. Like, just the thought of doing that when I know I can just climb around the challenge is, you know, not inviting. So like when it came to the Goron village, I just kind of climbed my way there and then did everything from that. But it was still a lot of fun doing the cannons. Fucking
the cannons are cool.
Getting to the Goron to save him, then going up the cliffside and dropping all the boxes on the drones and shit. You know, it felt more like the Zora Domain thing, where it felt like there was a fully fledged level here that I was playing through. I don't think the story was as interesting because there just wasn't much going on in the Goron. They're a bunch of goofy dudes, you know. Then the Gerudos, and that one was fun because you have to cross the desert. You have to dress dress and drag.
You get a cross dress
to get into town. The queen of the Gerudos is a super fucking adorable girl who
she's cool.
She's just a great character in herself, and I wish there was more of her. Like, I wish we learned more about what's going on in the Gerudo city. Like, had more time with her.
It would have been cool if after you beat the boss at a place, they gave you like an optional big quest line.
They do there. Not a big one, but if you click on her helmet while she's sitting in the throne.
Because is that where they send you to beat the ninjas?
No, that's beforehand. That's before
that's before.
When you first get to Gerudo Village, they've sent you to beat the Iga clan.
That shit was cool.
That was a good part.
Man.
Awesome. And then, but after you beat the boss there, if you visit her in the throne room, she has the Thunder Helm sitting next to her. Mm-hmm. And if you click on it, she asks you, like, basically you can say that you want it, and she'll send you on a quest that you have to do to get the Thunder Helm. I don't know what the quest is,
I feel like I did it. I can't remember.
But yeah, I mean, there's a ton of quests that are like, go fight some big fucking scary monster somewhere in the world and like do all this crazy stuff. But like, yeah, I wish more of it was put in your face. I wish more of it was like either a part of the story or that it had a story consequence to it. Because like a lot of the time, if you go do a side quest, you're basically just doing it for the sake of itself. Yeah. Like you go and you beat some big monster and you get some loot.
Because you get the same reward no matter what you do, you know?
Right.
You get the same reward.
And like in the old games, like I mean, if it's a shrine quest, it's one thing because you're getting basically a heart piece.
Yeah.
So there's something to that like,
but,
okay,
like,
I beat this big boss to get to a shrine.
Yeah. Sometimes it'll be this big grandiose quest to get a heart piece, and then other times it'll be you fucked around and got a heart piece, you know?
Yeah.
And so it makes it when you do the big one, it was like, okay, well, the reward here was the experience and not what I got at the end, because it's the same shit no matter what. You know?
I just wish there was times where maybe like you fight this boss and it tells you more about the region, like you learn more about the people, because all the characters in this game are just basically joke characters.
Yes.
And they're funny. I think they're funny, but I don't feel that immersed in the world culturally. Like the world map I'm immersed in because I've spent my time as a cartographer learning it. The people, the cultures, the societies, not that interesting.
It's too
the
gamey,
Gerudos
gamey
are probably the most interesting because you do learn, like, Gerudos have a really unique culture that has never been explored in the Zelda games before.
Yeah.
Like, okay, the Zoras are just the elves from the Lord of the Rings. They just are. The place looks like Irithyll. They act like elves. They are long-lived, pompous assholes. They're just the elves. The Gorons are pretty much just the dwarves. They're a little more unique because they eat rocks and they're fucking big monster men.
Yeah.
And they're cute, unlike the dwarves. They're not so much crude assholes, but they are kind of crude. And, you know, it's like a very male-dominated society. They're not that unique. The Rito, nothing. Nothing going on. Just a bunch of bird people.
Like, I think they were supposed to be militaristic, you know? But, like, there wasn't enough going on.
It comes off a little bit, but they just kind of seem dumb.
Yeah.
They just seem like not that interesting. They seem
have
like maybe they're
village
younger.
of 4 houses.
Like they don't live that long comparatively. But the Gerudo have, like, it's an all-female society where the women don't really stay in the Gerudo town because only women are allowed there. And most of the women, like, they have to fuck other races in order to have families. So they just leave and they explore the world, and you'll find them all over talking about, like, what they're looking for. And, like, they have this culture of they really like, you could call this sexist, but they're obsessed with jewelry and, like, shopping. Like, that's their culture.
It's a Japanese game. You can't expect that much.
It's pretty funny. I mean, even though they are all, like, 7 feet tall and have six-pack abs.
It's the ideal female society.
I guess so.
Where they're all huge badasses that love feminine things.
If it's like the Rick and Morty when they go to the planet where the men and women are like totally different species, basically. Yes. It's pretty much like that. But nonetheless, I thought Gerudo Town was cool, and like I wanted to know more about the people there and the culture, and I hope in a sequel that they focus on that, because I mean, in this game, there's this idea that the calamity happened, humanity is only rebuilt so much. Maybe now that Ganon's gone, we can have much bigger towns, like more of a culture going on, like, you know, be in the rehabilitation of the world era. I don't know what the boss would be, but, you know. If you have anything else to say about the main quest that you want to rant while I go take a piss, that would be great.
I need to pee too, so.
All right, well, we're going to take a
piss break.
So the ending of this game, what did you think about the final Calamity Ganon battle and ending?
I mean, it sucks, right? It's not. I mean, it's both awesome and not great.
It's, you know, it's funny because this is another one of those things where I'm torn between the fact that I'm happy the game gave me freedom and also unhappy.
Yeah.
Because at the point where I was, you know, I had beaten the Gerudo place and I was just going to go to the castle, I did not really want to play anymore.
I see.
Like, I was kind of sick of it because I felt like I had already...
Disappointing.
Just because I don't want to play a game for that long. Like, I'm not somebody... I didn't even think I was going to like Breath of the Wild because I looked at it as a long-ass open-world game.
Yeah, I'm surprised you even got it and played it.
I kind of was just like, I really wanted to play it because it's a Zelda game, and I've played most of them, and I love Zelda, and, you know, it's not one that's... People contend over how good it is. Nobody argues that it's bad.
Yeah.
I have not heard anybody say Breath of the Wild's a bad game. People have had differing opinions. I wanted to get my own stance on it. And, I also wanted to buy a Switch. Just because I was sick of playing PS4 games. The ending of the game, because I was kind of burned out, I was like, I've been playing this game all fucking week. I was playing it for like a solid week, I usually beat a video game in about 2 days, maybe 3. If I have to take longer than that, I start to really feel the shakes. Like, I got to do something else. This is taking a lot of my time,
See, I always go for like 2 weeks. I want a new game to last me 2 weeks, because if it goes on longer than 2 weeks, you're not going to finish it.
Mm-hmm.
I still haven't beat Sekiro. It's going on too long. It gets hard because you get
I gave
busy.
up. I played it for like a week, and I'm just so bad at it that like sometimes I'd play it all day and not make progress. So I just stopped.
So with Breath of the Wild, it was like, you don't want to beat it in 2 days, because then you're not going to feel like you had enough time with it. So when you get to the end, it's like, I feel like if I beat a game too fast, when I get to the end, I don't feel like I did anything,
Mm-hmm. I'm the opposite. I want to beat games as fast as possible.
I want to miss it when it's gone,
But like with this game, it was like I got to the end and I saw the castle, and I hadn't been there at all yet. I hadn't tried to sneak in or anything like that. Yeah. Which it seems really, because like once I was inside, there's a ton of items and shit in there, which I probably wouldn't have been able to beat the boss without.
You can go in at the start of the game and collect all that and beat the boss.
Right.
Like, I just watched a speed run last night of the game beat in 28 minutes. Just fucking incredible. You gotta watch that. But
I'd love to. I love that.
But it's like, you can get to that castle, collect all the strongest weapons in the game.
As long as you're good at perfect dodge and perfect counter, there's no reason you wouldn't be able to do it. Like, I don't even think it would be that hard.
Did you
compared to beating like a soul level 1 run of like Dark Souls, it would be nothing.
Did you know that if you just go fight Ganon from the very beginning of the game, you have to fight all 4 bosses before him? Like all the bosses of the dungeons, you have to fight them one after another in a gauntlet.
God damn.
Yeah. So they anticipated if you wanted that experience, you'd get the fucking ultimate challenge.
Yeah, that's fucking insane.
Yeah, it's really cool.
But yeah, the final battle, climbing through the tower, like, here's the thing. I wanted my experience with the final battle to be that I was going to come in there with a full set of Guardian armor, with tons of potions, with awesome weapons, and fully upgraded stuff, and be like mega prepared and fucking kill every enemy on the way in and beat the boss. Because that sounds like the most badass way to do it. But the Guardian armor is so expensive, and again, this is all, it all feeds back into my central point of like, I love the freedom, but I think that the most fun way to play this game would be a way that takes about 200 hours.
Yeah.
And
you got 100%. I mean, it's like every other Zelda game, Yeah. The best way to play a Zelda game is to 100% complete the game.
But because the game asks so little of you, it didn't feel like it would be satisfying, because it would feel like I'm grinding. Like that. Yeah. The difference between feeling like you're grinding and feeling like you're making natural progress is the pacing and the feel. Like, if going to the Gerudo Valley had been basically impossible with the level of gear that I had, I would have gone and beat a bunch of side quests. But it wasn't like that. Yeah. So when I got to Ganon's castle, at first it seems like it's going to be nearly impossible. There's all these guardians, there's all this shit. But if you time your running well, climb the right walls, I explored the whole castle. I got the Korok seeds up on the rafters and everything. I fucking went in. And, like, granted, the first couple times I fought the boss, it was way too hard. I was like, maybe I won't be able to do this without better gear. But I basically just got some food, got, like, 1 or 2 potions, just practiced my perfect dodge a little bit, because the dodge windows are huge on the boss. Like if he even starts swinging his sword and you hit dodge, you're gonna get the slow-mo.
It's just the thorough compromise on the entire game is that to be able, they wanted to have that level of freedom, and by having that, you just have to compromise structure, like difficulty structure,
So ultimately, I just kind of threw myself at him like 10 or so times.
Yeah.
Beat the boss. I had a full row +1 of hearts when I got to the end. And I, it took a bunch of tries to beat the first phase. The second phase is laughable.
Where he's the giant.
Yeah, the giant pig monster.
That's the biggest. Like, the boss battle could have been fine, but the pig monster is so stupid at the end.
There's just no challenge. And, like, I thought it was going to be, like, even harder, but if you die, maybe it'll start you at the beginning of that
like a
part of the battle.
sequence. Like, it's not even a battle.
I mean, here's the thing. You're supposed to do it on... You're on horseback, and you're meant to, like, run to each side, shoot him 3 times, and then shoot him in the head. I kind of fell off my horse real early on and just didn't even bother getting back on.
Jesus.
Like, it's not hard to get... Like, he doesn't move very fast.
Yeah.
So you could just run around him and shoot him.
He just stands there.
And I was like, well, using my horse would be less true to my playthrough anyway. So, it was not difficult at all. It's just like... I don't mind it conceptually, but, like, why is it so easy that it doesn't even take thought?
It's just when you think about the end of Ocarina of Time, fucking cool fight.
Yeah.
Crazy awesome killing Ganondorf. You think about the end of Wind Waker, fucking badass fight.
Yeah.
Epic killing of Ganondorf. You think about Twilight Princess, the most badass fight in Zelda. Epic killing of Ganondorf. Impaling him, and he sits there and he dies while he's talking to you and shit. Fucking cool as shit. Then you get to this game and it's like,
I mean, part of it is that Calamity Ganon's not a character in this game.
Yeah.
He's more of a concept.
Yeah.
He just exists to be the final boss. But yeah, like, it's fairly underwhelming. Especially, like, I was shocked the most by how underwhelming the ending cutscene is. Because, like, it's just kind of Zelda shows up and it's like, hey, you did it. And then it cuts to credits, and the credits are just still images of places. Like, I'm thinking back on Ocarina, where you have all the characters having a big festival together and, like, playing all the different music. And, where were all my friends? Where was all the characters? Where's all the villages that I explored? Like, why is it not more like that?
You explore this whole world, but you feel like you didn't really meet anyone or make any friends or
exactly. It felt
get
like
invested in the characters.
What was there not? Why wasn't there at least like the 4 guys like ghosts in the clouds nodding in approval?
Yoda.
Like Yoda at the end of fucking Star Wars or Happy Gilmore.
Yeah.
Just something like that, just to make it feel more like it just literally felt like, well, that's the end, well, you did it, you beat the game, you don't have to play anymore, know. And I can imagine it would be way more disappointing if you'd really spent that much time in the world and then got this like kind of slapdick ending.
Yeah. How many hours do you think you put in?
It's hard to say. I mean, probably close to 60.
Jesus Christ. So I feel like I put in like 45 to 60 or something. Or no, I think I put in 80. Fuck.
Yeah, you had to put in more than that.
God, yeah.
It's a long fucking... It takes a long time to do anything in the game. Like, until you have a certain amount of shrines unlocked and it's easier to teleport around, like, if you don't get a horse early on or something, like, you really got to run pretty long distances around.
But that's simultaneously the best part of the game. Like, that's...
I wish there were few... Okay, the thing is about this game... I think that they hid too much shit. Like, there needed to be more stuff out in the open. There's 120 shrines. I did 50 of them. I did all the ones that are obvious. Anyone that's sitting out in the open, which means that there's, like, way more, like, hidden ones, which is fine, but, like, there's long stretches where you're just running through an area of nothing. You're just running through an open field. You're just running across a mountain range. And I think that some of that is in order to create the, the vistas that I talked about, where, like, if you're on this mountain, you can only see this, this, and this. The space just had to be laid out a certain way. There had to be a certain amount of distance between things. But there's too many areas where there's just nothing there. Where it's just flyover country, and like if there I don't think there needed to be that. There could have been more stuff that wasn't secret, that was just in the open, so you didn't... Even if it was just more enemy encounters, like, there's surprisingly little of those, encampments of moblins that
there's a lot. You just gotta go down the right path,
Right, but like,
one of those things.
If you run through the middle of Hyrule Field, there's nothing there.
Hyrule Field is it's the weirdest part, It's the most empty. I think it was just to make it feel big, yeah.
Well, I think the expectation is that you'll ride horses a lot, but like we've said, you don't spend that much time on horses if you spend a lot of time climbing. And I think with the original design of the game, they probably figured that you would be regularly on a horse. Like, you would almost always get from place to place on horse. I barely rode horses, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Let's talk about the basic mechanics. We've touched on a lot of it. Climbing, sword fighting. Many people have noted how creative you can get with this game. If you watch like Donkey videos or something where he's pulling out some really amazing strats. Like, that was a part of the reason I wanted to play this game, is even though I knew I would not engage with most of that stuff because it's just not how I play video games, I just have so much respect for it. Like, I really appreciate that they made the game have all that interesting stuff that you can do, because it means that if you choose to explore all that, you can have vastly different playthroughs. You can have really unique experiences that nobody else is going to have. And, some of the chain reactions and stuff that can be set off by just being in the right place with the right equipment. And the amount of them that they subtly did plan for, but just don't tell you about. Like, hey, this moblin's on a cliffside, and there's a Korok leaf over in the woods over there. And if you put 2 and 2 together, you can make this guy fly off the cliff. The combat, though, is basically just swing your sword back and forth for the most part. And, like...
Yeah, you got the parries. You got arrows you can throw in there.
Switching between different weapons is kind of cumbersome.
You get used to it, I think.
I think that,
it can be a bitch.
With this game, there's so much push and pull. Because on the one hand... the way that they've designed the game to be extra, like, you take really harsh hits, you get a lot of damage done to you, and it makes sense that opening up menus pauses the game, because you can, open up a menu, eat a bunch of food, and then get back into combat, and, like, you kind of have to. You need to pause combat in order to, to survive combat a lot of the time. But there's just so many fucking buttons. It's like, press up on the stick, and then use the right joystick to choose between the different stuff, or you can switch between... You have a different loadout for bows versus swords.
Surprising for Nintendo, where they're usually really minimalist with their controls, and then this one is just like, every time I get back into the game, I have to relearn all the shit.
I never got coordinated enough to be, like, confident in battle. Like, I have shitty hand-eye coordination, all right? This is why I'm not that good at video games. Like, it's a kind of a meme. People act like I don't know shit about video games just because I'm not good at them. Not true. I know a lot about video games. I'm a big video game guy, just not that good because my hand-eye coordination's not that good. And when a game tasks me to do complicated things and to remember which button does what when... and, like, to constantly be on the fly, like, switching between stuff, I just get confused. I will press the wrong button. I will, forget which thing is mapped to what, and I never get better at that. And, like, the amount of times where maybe I'm having to, I'm slashing with a sword, then I switch to the bow, and then it's like, oh, I might need to get out the magnet, but I press R1, and, oh, it's the bombs. I don't have the magnet equipped. I gotta equip the magnet and then switch back to the bow, and it's just like, it's so much to keep track of. And I'd rather not, it just felt really complicated and overwhelming to me. So I just skipped most combat. But, like, the game feel, aside from, like, swinging the sword looks dorky, because Link just kind of goes back and forth. It looks really dumb. The impact is good. Like, when you hit enemies, it's satisfying. But the animation doesn't look cool. But, like, just... running, jumping, climbing, all that stuff looks and feels great. It's particularly the running around, because Zelda games have taken different approaches to this. Twilight Princess, really Wind Waker onwards, have done this thing where they kind of railroad Link, where he steers more like an automobile. Like, you don't have that one-to-one, like, if I press left, Link turns left. You have that back in this game. which is very important to me. I like to feel like I have total control over my character, not to feel like I'm, piloting him, so to speak. And that drove me insane in Twilight Princess. I would run off of ledges so often because of the way that Link controls.
Jesus.
This game didn't have that problem, but I did think that climbing, it feels a little slow. Like, it didn't really need to be that slow.
I mean, did you get the stuff to make it faster?
Yes, it's still too slow.
And you could use potions to make it faster?
I had the bandana the whole game, pretty much.
Did you have all... There's 3 pieces.
I did not have 3 pieces.
Yeah, there's a full armor set, and you can have haste potions.
All I had was
engage the mechanics.
All I had was the bandana.
You can't even talk about it. You gotta get
it's
get
still
the bandana.
too slow.
You gotta get all the armor.
Well, okay.
It was meant to reward you for finding these.
Climbing, whatever, fine, fair argument. Swimming is way too slow.
It was a Zora armor.
Doesn't make it faster.
Yeah, it does.
Is there more Zora armor?
Yeah, there's 3 pieces.
Where the fuck do you get the other 2 pieces?
Does it make it faster? Because it makes the water. You can jump up.
You can jump up waterfalls, but you don't.
Because I never got all the pieces.
I only ever had the breastplate, but it didn't make you swim any faster. Maybe if there are 3 pieces, but I never heard about the other 2 pieces. Either way, swimming is really fucking slow, and I think they mostly did it that way because there's a lot of times where water is used as an impediment, where it's like, this channel is really long, you can't cross it, you gotta find another way.
You gotta find a raft.
If there is a way to make the swimming faster, then the argument's kind of moot, but it was just really frustrating how fucking slow you swim.
Yeah. I still remember it being a problem,
Well, I mean, if you try
you're meant to just not be swimming much,
Right, well,
you'll die.
It would be nice if there was some swim. If you could go underwater, maybe it would be cool.
You gotta find a boat. You gotta get a raft.
True. The raft system is cool. Yeah. I guess it was just like they made the swimming slow for the sake of other things, but it's just like, man, swimming sucks.
Because they needed something to be an obstacle,
Yeah. Overall, though, I was satisfied with the controls and the overall game feel. Did you play this game at all in handheld mode?
I did. Yeah, I played a lot in handheld mode.
Because, like...
It's pretty nice.
To me, the shrinking the world down to that screen takes all of the majesty out of it.
It takes a little bit to adjust. Like, the first time I don't think I played that way at all. Like, the whole first time I played the game. But it's really like, if you get stuck on a plane, and you're playing Breath of the Wild, it feels pretty fucking cool.
I mean, I imagine that would be a great, like... And here's another thing about this game. When you beat it, you can start back from your last save before you beat the final boss. If I were to imagine myself going and doing all the secret shit, it would be, hey, 7-hour plane ride to LA, fucking what better to do than play all the side quests in Zelda Breath of the Wild.
That's where the Switch really sets in when you get in a situation where you really have nothing else to do but play the Switch. And you're out, and you have a Switch, and then you turn on that fucking Zelda Breath of the Wild, and you go, this is a fucking console game in my hands. Like, this is a good game that I am sitting here mobile playing,
Game with very satisfying controls.
Yeah.
And all right, next let's talk about the art and sound design.
Yes.
You had some stuff you wanted to talk about with the sound design of this game.
I'm gonna go in, because the sound design of this game is fucking incredible. So, I'm already assuming... that you played this game the way that I play almost every single game I play. Which is like, play for a while, maybe you listen to the game audio for a while, but you're probably putting on a podcast or music.
You know what? Very surprisingly, I just listened to the game almost the whole way
I actually
through.
did the first playthrough I did almost the whole time.
That's particularly weird for 2 reasons. 1, I almost never play games that way, and 2, this game has a lot of fucking silence in it.
Yes.
And... it was mainly just because of the way my setup is that, like, I didn't have a convenient way to play a podcast while I was playing the game, so I just kind of was trapped with the game audio. But I'm interested in having this conversation because I feel... everything about this game I feel 2 ways about. That's why I wanted to do this as a podcast with you, because I feel 2 ways about literally everything.
Because, again, I felt 2 ways about it before until very later in one of my... more recent play, like, it took me forever to realize.
How many times have you, like, attempted playthroughs of this game?
Probably, like, 4 or 5 times.
Okay.
Like, starting at the beginning and getting halfway through the game,
Okay.
But I've never beaten the game twice. But I just love playing it, so I always want to do the same stuff again. Partially because I came up, like, there's a time I did a new playthrough when I wanted to explore it with the map, with all the shrines on it, and I did a new playthrough when I decided that there was an optimal way to play the game, and I wanted to figure it out. And then there's the Vic and Hope playthrough, you know? And then on that one, I've played off-screen collecting shrines and stuff.
The Vic and Hope playthrough, which, by the way, is what we've been showing in the background this whole time. Yeah. It's just going to be footage of that because I didn't take my own footage of the game when I played it.
But basically, at some point, I'm playing... I have this monitor I have that's this expensive video recording monitor that has HDR, and for shits and giggles, I plugged the Switch into it to see if it would work, and looked at the colors in like HDR, which isn't meant to be HDR, but that's unimportant. I was just fucking around. But for the first time, because through that monitor it doesn't have audio, you have to plug in headphones to hear the game. So I put on some nice-ass headphones and listened to the game for the first time on my ears, and I realized that this game is meant to be played with headphones.
I would believe that.
And I think it's because it's a handheld console, and you're meant to play it on the go, on a train, with headphones in. They took a lot more care into the sound design, thinking that you would be playing it with headphones, which is part of why there's no background music most of the time. Because if you're playing it with headphones, that music becomes monotonous and jarring way more than if it's on a TV, you know?
I can see that.
Because it's getting beamed directly into your brain and you get fatigued from the shitty sound. Like in a lot of games on the Switch, since I've played with headphones, and you just want to fucking turn the sound off because you're like, God, this is driving me fucking insane with it blasting in my ears. But with Breath of the Wild, everything is like, all the sounds are soft. Everything is like little twinkles. And then if you run around, it's like you can hear the faint breeze in the distance. You can hear things far away like shouting at you. You can hear every different sort of item has its own like audio cue, you know?
Yeah.
Where it'll do like a little twinkle. Yeah. There's like all of those are, and it's just like super pleasant, almost ASMR while you're playing this game.
It is very light.
Yeah.
I mean, it is Breath of the Wild. It's
so I realized,
soft breathe.
You know, it's designed to be in headphones. You can hear like things that are behind you. You know, you have a good spatial relationship of where things are when you're listening in headphones, and just everything sounds incredible. Yeah. Like really, really nice.
I love the way the music in this game is mostly pretty minimal. Like in terms of what instruments, like how many instruments are used, but they use the most impeccable sounding instruments.
The aesthetics of the sound are
it sounds really great. You go to towns and the music is always amazing. There's like jingles that play just like when you sort of get to a new area, or like if you crest a mountain, there might be like a little like blum blum blum. But it always left me sad when it didn't continue. It would be like you hear this little jingle and you're like, ah, and then you're just alone again. And you're like, well, you know, like that was...
And I agree on my first playthrough where I wanted, you know, everyone wants the Hyrule fucking field theme and shit. Right. But it's like... But then, you know, as I played more and as it dawned on me, the headphone thing, it was really like, okay, the sound design of this game is really, really well thought out.
I mean, I think this is another case where the playstyle will affect it, because if you spend a lot of time... just running through empty areas and avoiding combat, all you're really going to hear is your boots for hours. You know, it's just hours and hours. Or like the clanging of your armor, which can be really annoying.
Yeah.
There are moments where I thought there was like a clock going or something, because it was just the noise that my armor was making. I don't need that much realism. You know, like you could leave out some of the noises if they're more annoying. But yeah, I mean, when there is music in the game, it clearly is dynamic. It's built around like highlighting specific moments. You know, I would say it's more artfully used than if it was just playing all the time. But
and I think with the amount of time you spend in this game and like what you're doing, having constant music would have gotten really annoying.
It would have, but like the thing about games for me, and I've always struggled with music in games because of the fact that, be it that there's not that much music or that there's constant music, either way, either one's not the best possibility. Like, hearing a song over and over again, it gets old pretty quick, and hearing no music makes me feel weird and uncomfortable because I am typically listening to things all the time. I always have something playing, something going on. So, like, you know, there were parts in this game where I would just throw on the Dick Show and play for a while. But like then I kind of felt like I was missing out.
Definitely, I think if I was like shrine hunting, you know, then it's like put on a podcast,
right?
Because you're kind of grinding in a way.
You want to be able to hear it when you get to a new town, and like it does feel, it adds to the magic significantly when you hear those really gorgeous dulcet piano tones as you enter a new place, and you're like, wow, the music is stellar that is there. And this is one of the, I don't listen to a lot of video game music on my own time. I don't listen to a lot of like soundtracks. This is one of those games where I felt like I would listen to the soundtrack. Yeah. Maybe only when I'm going to bed because it's pretty peaceful, but you know, it's good. Yeah, there's a fuckload of unique sound effects for sure. And certain ones that you'll get, like you'll start to have a like automated response to from hearing it.
Yeah.
Because you hear it so many times. Definitely this is a game where being able to hear incoming danger and stuff is kind of important. Like, I feel like this game would be a lot harder without sound.
Yeah. There's so many cues, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of audio cues. There's a lot of even just hearing stuff way in the distance behind you that might be important, you know? Yeah. The voice acting is hilarious, as it always is in Zelda. Lots of, hi!
Yes.
Hoo-hoo!
That's
ha! Hoo-hoo! Every time you click on their text box, hoo-hoo! Hoo-hoo! I love that shit. It can be annoying sometimes, but
Magic Gay Men and stuff.
Overall, it's fun.
Dye in your clothes.
There's so many gay characters. Like, Zelda's always been that way.
But they're always like the
camp. They're always camp
campy
gay.
queen. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a ton of camp gay in this game. But you know, I appreciate it. It's fun. Okay, art design. This is where I'm less torn. I think mostly the art design is phenomenal.
Of course.
The one complaint I have is that the general world, the world map, the places you go, first of all, not enough variety. I think they were trying to go for realism to a fault, where it's like, you know, I mean, we already have these absurdly distinct regions that would never exist in real life in that kind of proximity, so why go for realism at all?
It doesn't go hard enough, and like you go to a snowy mountain, but there's no like ice cavern, you know? Yeah. There's no like fire cave.
It needed to be less Oblivion and more Morrowind in this regard. You know, we needed to have a mushroom forest or like
you get the woods. But there's not that much going on in the woods, you know, the lost woods.
Each area is not distinct enough in its color palette. It's not distinct enough in the type of terrain that's there. It's mostly mountains, mostly green, brown, and gray. I think
the exception is the valley area with the waterfalls.
That place is cool,
which is like
but
really cool with all the bananas and shit.
I would say, like, you know, the world map here, it's no Dark Souls map.
Yeah.
It is definitely no Dark Souls map. It's definitely no Metroid Prime map. You know, like, it's not even as memorable as some of the previous Zelda games.
I mean, yeah, because it's an open world game, you know?
You
gotta compare it to open world game
This
maps.
also feeds into my idea of the game as one level. Like, because it doesn't feel like... Even most open world games... Well, okay, I'll take that back. Most of them are kind of uniform.
You look at Skyrim. Like the variety of this game compared to Skyrim.
Sucks. I hate
like,
Skyrim.
God.
But like, if we were comparing it to a game, I mean, like Dark Souls is an open world game with a world almost as big as this one. When you think about it, like it's not open in the sense that you could just cross a mountain, but like in terms of land size,
style,
the feeling of like crossing a huge amount of area. You know, like, you feel like you're in a big ass game. You know.
Yeah.
I just think that it would have been dead easy to make the areas more distinctive from each other. And, like, there are ways to do that where it will feel like it makes sense. Just because you can see over there and, you know, I understand the idea of, like, oh, it would be jarring to go from this to this. But, like, you already have jarring climate changes in this game. Yeah. It's already silly and goofy. You could push it a little farther. I think of, like, again, I was comparing this to an MMO. Terra Online. My favorite thing about that game is that each region is so distinct. Yeah. You go to one place and everything's like pink cherry blossom, like a pink and purple kind of aesthetic. You know, everywhere you go is just giant trees and giant mountains, but they look and feel so different from each other. Yeah. This game could have used more of that.
It's more of a World of Warcraft.
And I also don't like how shiny it is. Like it feels like everything is almost metallic. Like there's like just a shiny gleam off of everything.
I don't know about metallic.
I think they could have softened the lighting effects a bit. But nonetheless, I do think that the sheer amount of thought that went into designing the world is unbelievably impressive. Yeah. It is all memorable. Regardless of how distinctive it is, you will know your way around this fucking map. Like, by the time I had explored the whole thing, I had a very clear sense of what was where. I could remember everywhere I'd been because of the topography. Again, it wasn't so much the visuals as just the layout that was so distinct. No two places are just... Like, you play Red Dead Redemption, you go from one open field to another open fucking field. Yeah. You know, you're just in a Badlands. It's the same. You play GTA, you play Spider-Man, it's buildings, you know? Like... You play this game, and everywhere you go, you're like, okay, I know that cliff leads into this valley, and then there's a tower over there, and you know exactly where you are. Which is interesting, because, like, again, watching other people play this game in little bits and pieces on Let's Plays, I felt like it was going to be a game where you get lost. You don't feel that lost after a certain point in this game. You know your way around.
You know what you're doing.
And you know how to get from point A to point B, and because you can teleport around, it doesn't really remain this big, foreboding open space for that long. Yeah. It's more like you get a lay of the land, and then you just kind of go for specific objectives. But, the best thing about the art design in this game is the fucking character designs. The character designs are godly in this game, and
pretty great.
Matthew Matosis in his video about the game did like a pretty good breakdown of why.
I'm always tempted to get all the amiibos.
Fucking
expensive.
The fact that they created such distinctive races in this game, and like. It's unfortunate that the way they're portrayed narratively is kind of generic. Like the Zoras, again, they're just elves. But they don't look like elves. They look totally unique. They're these weird shark people. And like the fact that they used all the different species of sharks.
Yeah, like the hammerhead. When I saw the hammerhead shark guy, I was mind blown. Just like amazing.
They're all different types of sharks. But they all look consistent enough that you get it. Like, okay, it's a race of shark people. I've never seen a race of shark people drawn this way before. I love that they're simultaneously kind of cutesy and yet kind of threatening. They're kind of noble but kind of goofy. Like there's a lot of sides to them, and they feel like such well-realized characters that it's really a shame that their society is just a weird elf place. What do they eat? Why do they live in a sterile metal tower? What is their society? Yeah. Do they even have houses? Where do they sleep? You know? Like,
I feel like it's a problem in every Nintendo game. When you get into a town and it just feels so small that the world shrinks down. Yeah. Because it's like, I can see that there are literally only 10 people living in this town.
Yeah.
What the fuck is this town?
This game, it justifies it to an extent because there's this idea that the calamity happened and so there's not that many people left. And like when you get to Kakariko and they're talking about how like, okay, this place wasn't that affected by the calamity. They've kind of kept themselves small on purpose. And like the human villages, everybody clearly has a house. They clearly have a bed. And when you get to the Rito village, you kind of feel like, okay, these are mostly shops, but they have like hammocks where the people sleep. Where the fuck did the Zoras sleep? Where do they go?
I think.
Where do they live?
I think there's beds
in the hotel.
Yeah, there's like a hotel or like a hospital that has.
There's
beds.
Not like rooms. The characters don't have houses. Do they just not sleep? Mm-hmm. Is there something I'm not getting? Do they sleep in the water? I don't know. You go to the Goron village, there's no sense of culture, there's no sense of anything like that, but the Gorons look cool. They made them more distinct from each other. They're super expressive. I love the facial expressions on the Gorons. Gorons have always been a great design.
I feel like the Gorons had some culture. The Zoras, I felt like didn't have enough. Like the domain just feels like just this thing, you know.
It's just the place from Lord of the
Rings.
Rings.
The Gorons had like mines, you know. They had like stuff going on.
They do have the mines.
They had the mine carts and all that. They had blacksmiths and like they had all kinds of shit going on. So like they made more sense to me.
I guess they had less like personality in their dialogue than the Zoras, but like
they're goofballs, you know. But they've been the Gorons that they've always been in every game.
I mean, I'm glad they didn't try to like the Gorons are basically the Gorons. Yeah, like you said, like they've always been. They're just like the best depiction of them yet. The Zoras are very different and they're very unique and cool. The Rito, they're bird people. They're fine. They're my least favorite in this game because they're not that distinctive. Like the Gerudos, they managed to take what was originally just like it's just a village where they're all women and they have big noses and they're brown. I mean they're just supposed to be Middle Eastern people. Like there's nothing else to them than that they are Middle Eastern people. Except in this game they're like 7 feet tall with abs and they have a more distinctive culture. And I loved the way that they looked and how they were able to be more distinct. There were fat Gerudo women. There were old Gerudo women, like every character looks a little different in this game. I consistently love the character designs. Everybody I talked to, I was like, wow, that's a distinct character who I will remember. So character designs, probably the one aspect of this game I would like unquestionably give a 10 out of 10 is character design. Love the colors of everything.
Yeah. All your armor's cool.
Armor's good too. Costume design is great. Yeah. Zelda's costume is incredible.
Zelda's a waifu.
Anything you want to say about art or sound design?
We'll get the short hair Zelda later.
Cover.
Fuck, man, I don't know. This is great. It's one of those things where it's just like it's so good. I like it. I love it.
Weapon designs are cool too.
Yeah, weapons are cool.
It's easy to tell what type of weapon you're holding, and they're very distinct in their character. Cool. I loved using the big rock crushers.
Yeah. I guess I'm not a big fan of the Sheikah slate items,
Oh, and the Sheikah are cool too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that village was dope.
I would say that like the cool thing about the weapons is there's not a ton of generic ones. Like there are generic weapons, but they're not like in the Souls games. You have like an overwhelming number of just regular ass swords, and then the occasional fucking crazy ass one. In Zelda, you will always have some cool swords on you.
Yeah.
And you start getting ones with different effects and stuff like that. Shields look pretty good.
Yeah. You get a lightning sword and throw it at a guy and he freezes, or an ice sword and you throw it at a dude and he freezes.
Yeah.
Hit him with the fire sword.
And they catch on fire.
Yeah.
They melts. I don't think anything melts when you throw a fire sword.
Melts.
All right.
You light shit on fire.
That's enough about art and sound design. Let's talk about side quests.
Side quests.
Side quests are probably like 60% of what's in this game.
Yeah, I suppose. If you do them as side quests, which can be difficult sometimes.
The side quests. All right. So here's the big bring it all home on like kind of the general thesis I've been saying for this whole video, because we ended up saying so much in the first part of this that it didn't really leave that much left for the further parts. But my biggest statement to make about this game is I wish it was designed more like an MMO.
Yeah.
Because when you play an MMO, it's like what you were describing the game as the optimal way to play it. You get to a region and you are naturally pushed through every part of it. Yeah. Like you'll show up in town and there will be a main quest, which will be like, go kill this boss who's like over there to the right.
Yeah.
And before you go do that, you pick up a bunch of side quests that are all things between here and that spot to the right.
Yeah.
So you go, you do those side quests.
You explore every single part of the map because the map was designed for you to do a side quest at every place.
Exactly. So you go and you do the side quests one at a time, and like maybe you go straight to try to fight the boss, but he's too strong. And you realize, okay, let me go do all those side quests, and by the time you do them all, you're strong enough to fight the boss. And like you don't have to do things this way. The game is not linear. It's not just telling you have to do that. Like sometimes you can go skip some side quests. You could do things depending on the strength of your party. Maybe you don't have to do as much. If you're playing solo, you probably have to do more of that. But like in Zelda, because there's so much freedom, you most likely will not take this approach. Yeah. And the game is kind of designed that way, but because you can approach places from so many different angles, you never know when you're supposed to do what. You show up in a town, and the characters are like, all right, you can do this, this, and this, and some of it is stuff that's right around the town. Sometimes they're giving you a hint for something that's in a mountain, fucking 70 meter, way the fuck far away, and you don't know if you're strong enough to do that yet.
Yeah.
You don't know when you are strong enough to do what, and so like you always have this sense of, okay, I guess I'll come back and do that later. And then you never get around to doing it because you never have to.
And that's the problem. Because really, you could have done it right there, That's why they gave you the quest, because you could do it now, You're at the place talking to the guy. You could go do that.
But they don't make it very clear.
Yeah.
And because there's so much freedom, you always feel like you're pushing things off. And the biggest thing that's missing is quest lines. Not just quests, quest lines.
Yeah.
Where quests feed into each other.
That's really, like, there is one. In what is it fucking... We keep saying Kakariko Village, but, like, what is the fucking village with the ninjas?
That's Kakariko.
That's Kakariko, with the ninjas.
The white-haired people, you mean.
What's the village with the lighthouse and stuff?
I don't remember what it's called. Hatino?
I think you have those backwards.
Lighthouse? You mean the lab?
Yeah, the lab.
That's Hatino Village, where you can buy a house.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm absolutely sure. I just played the game.
Okay.
Kakariko is where the Sheikah live.
Yeah.
Just like it was in the old game.
So anyways, in Kakariko Village, that is a quest line. If you do every single quest, then you unlock the end of the quest to beat that area, basically. Which actually... That's another thing where I was talking about the best way to play the game.
Like including the 10 cuckoos gathering and stuff like that?
If you do every quest in the village, then you will be able to do the final quest for, like... Because you go into the place where the old lady is. The old Chica lady. Fucking Impa or whatever. And there's a... If you go upstairs and you talk to the daughter, and then she talks about the glowing orb in her book, and then there's the orb next to Impa that you can't get... And you know that the orbs are keys to unlock shrines.
It's really funny because there's that hole for the thing right next to the village. Exactly. And I was always like, where the fuck is the ball for this? And I never even thought about the fact that it's in Kakariko
Because
Village.
what you have to do is you beat all the quests in the village, and then a ninja comes and steals the ball. One of the bad guy ninjas. From the end of the game.
Yeah.
From fucking, the Iga clan. And that is supposed to introduce you to the Iga clan. Because they steal the ball from Kakariko Village, and then you hunt them down, and then you get the ball, and you get the shrine.
I met them right outside Kakariko Village, because there's one of them standing right there.
Because you fight them around the world, but like you don't know really who the fuck they are until way later in the game. Because you're supposed to go through Kakariko Village, do every quest for every person, get that quest, beat it.
That frustrates me, because that's not a quest line. That's
it is.
That's like you figuring out by chance that by doing everything it happens to, like, when I say quest line, I mean like do a quest that immediately leads to another quest. That immediately, and like have a narrative, because like most of the quests are, hey, I heard a rumor that there's a thing over there, or can you go get this for me? Like there's no narrative, and so you won't assume that, like, it'd be one thing if it was like say a traditional MMORPG quest would be like you enter a new area and they're like, there's this big boss who's got all these legions, but first we need to find his scouts. So go kill some of his scouts and collect the information they're carrying. And then they'll read you the information. They'll say, oh, it turns out that these scouts were trying to find this device. So you got to beat them to the device. They're already on the way there. And then you go to the device, you beat them, you activate the device. Okay, well, activating the device cleared a path to the boss. So now you can go fight him. Like, that kind of thing is what keeps you compelled to do all those quests, even if you don't pay attention to the story. Just the fact that they are one after another in sequence. Whereas in this game, there's a lot of quests where you just go and you do it, and then you've done the quest. And like, sure, I guess if you do all the ones in an area, sometimes it unlocks a secret final quest, but there's no telegraph of that.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know that, and then you don't do it throughout the whole game, and then you're like, well, what other areas is this a thing, Do I have to go back to every, you're just supposed to go to the village and do every quest when you get there. Like, that's the ideal way to do it.
I mean, it makes sense. That makes sense with the way the game is designed.
It
just doesn't really make you do that. It doesn't signpost it. It doesn't communicate very well with you, which is generally kind of a Nintendo problem, I guess, is bad communication.
Because there's nothing gatekeeping you. In an MMO, you can't progress until you do all the quests because you won't be a high enough level, you know?
Right. Well, you just won't try.
You'll
get to the
really
dungeon
progress,
and you'll be like, oh man, yeah.
Difference in structure, you know?
Well, and that's another thing where, like, I almost wish there was leveling in this game because it would communicate that so much better. Yeah. Like, to me, it was like I spent basically the whole first half of the game constantly confused about where I was meant to go at my level. You know, I was like, am I strong enough to take on these challenges? Because I didn't know how strong the weapons would get. I didn't know how much you're supposed to use potions. Yeah. Like, it seems like the game really expects you to, from the beginning, be using lots of potions and shit every time you do an encounter.
And the thing is, if you fight the stronger enemies, you get the stronger weapons, and the rest of the enemies get stronger. So you can create your own difficulty.
It makes sense now that I know that, but the game doesn't tell me that, and
I
don't think to play that way. I would normally think, okay, these enemies are too strong, I'll come back later. Yeah. Like, now that I know there's never a time where that's really the case, it's like, oh, well, then I guess I should have just gone through that and just did that quest when I got to it. I wouldn't think that way, because games don't usually work that way.
Intuitively, you approach it like Dark Souls, where it's like, that's how you want it to be. You want to go into an area and be like, oh, this is too strong for me. I'll come back later
because
when I'm supposed to.
And then you feel cool if you find out, okay, well, you know, that area was too strong, but I ran straight to this special sword, and I got that, and that makes it so I can now do this other area. But then
the special swords break, which is you know, when I first played the game, the same thing happened, where I was like, oh, I climbed the mountain. Like, there's one of those first twin peaks, you go up and there's a sword in the mountain, you pull it out, and it's like a katana, and I was like, whoa, I got this cool sword, I'm gonna hold on to it as long as possible until I find a strong enemy.
So often, I never used my strongest swords, because I know they're gonna break, like, so I would just use my weak-ass swords all the time.
Yeah. And but if you use a strong sword and kill stronger enemies, then you get more strong swords, and more strong enemies with better swords are appearing. So, like, that's... It is a flaw, you know? It's a flaw in how you would intuitively approach a game, because you're not used to treating these things like they're disposable, which they are. And, like, it's designed for everything to be disposable, and, like, you're just supposed to be throwing it away.
Well, and here's part of the problem with that. And we're going to move on from side quests into...
Well, we should talk about our favorite side quests. Do you have favorite side quests? Are you aware of quests that you didn't do?
I have not done a lot of research into the quests I didn't do. Because I want to
construct the village.
No,
because that's a quest I know of that I didn't do. Yeah, where it's like you build a village.
Okay, here's another thing.
Areas.
This is another element of the simultaneously, I'll say, lack of communication, but also just my lack of experimentation. One of the first things that I wanted to do, like, early on, I got to Hatino Town, and they're like, you can buy a house.
Yes, but you need the 400 wood or whatever.
No, you need 30 bundles of wood.
Yeah, 30 bundles of wood.
And 3,000 rupees.
Yeah.
And
immediately you think, I'll come back later, is what you thought, right?
Right. And I'm thinking... 3,000 rupees sounds like a fuckload, because I'm used to other Zelda games where your wallet can't even hold 99. So I'm like, I don't know how long it's going to take me to raise 3,000. I don't know how long it's going to take me to find 30 bundles of wood. And I keep picking up bundles of wood exclusively from, from stables. Because stables always have 3 bundles. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe over the course of this game, I will eventually... No, you can just bomb any tree and get a bundle of wood.
No, you just chop it down.
Or just bomb it with your...
I never thought to bomb it, because if you just get an axe and you chop it and then you hit the wood, it turns into a bunch of bundles of wood.
Guess what will use a lot less of your axes is free bombs. So
because you're supposed to just say, oh, I should go get 30 bundles and then come back, and then you have a house. And once you have the house, you could upgrade it.
So I get the house at the very end of the game.
Yeah.
And I get in there, and there's nothing in the house. So it's just like, why did I bother, you know?
Because the idea of the house is that you can upgrade it a bunch, and second, you can store your strong weapons in the house.
Right, I figured that would be the main use.
Because you're supposed to, you know, that special sword you don't want to use, you're supposed to go out and find that and then go, I'm going to save this till the end of the game. Even though in Ganon's castle, all the strongest swords are in there.
Right.
So you don't need to save. Because I had done the same thing where I collected like Lionel swords and shit and put them all in the house. like, oh, I'm gonna take these to the last boss, and then like it doesn't really matter.
Literally,
you know?
getting the house was like one of the last things I did.
I mean, I did it pretty late,
and it was only because I didn't know about getting bundles of wood from trees. Like,
yeah.
I had 15 and I had 3,000 gold, and then eventually I just went, oh, all I have to do is bomb trees. Okay, knocked that out, and then the one guy says he's gonna go build a town in Akala, but I could not find where he was. So I didn't follow that quest line any further, but it seemed like it would be a cool quest line.
It seems like the highlight of the fucking game is that quest, and I haven't done it yet, you know, because I just found out about it later and watched it and was like, oh, this is cool as shit.
There were lots of things that it was like neat to know it was there, but it seemed like it would be a pain in the ass, like the labyrinths. There's 3 fucking labyrinths.
The labyrinths are fucking awesome. Have you not done them?
So the first one,
those are like the coolest shit.
I went to the one in the north, and I explored the whole labyrinth by holding, like, I just stuck to the right wall, you know, classic style. Went around the entire thing, got back to the entrance, couldn't get into the shrine, didn't know what to do, left.
Oh my god! The labyrinths are like the most fun!
Then I flew to the one that was above Akala, didn't know what to do, left. Went to the one in Gerudo Valley, didn't know what to do, left. What is so fun about them?
They're cool. Because you have to, like, explore around, and then you gotta, like, break the vines, and then you go through, and, like, you get to the shrine, and it's just cool.
That's probably what I didn't do.
Yeah, you have to find the eyeballs and shoot them, and then you get rid of
I did shoot an eyeball, and then it didn't... It cleared a path back to the entrance, and then I was like, what the fuck? There's nothing else here.
They're cool. You gotta really dig in deep and fucking, like,
I guess
figure them out.
There's
some of the coolest
challenges. I did not do a lot of side quests. Like, I
can tell.
really... Because, again, it just felt... Like, I would see it, and I would go, okay. And then it was that the few I did had so little payoff. Like, I went to the... So, after you do the Lost Woods, there's this other, like, Shrouded in Darkness woods above that, right? Yeah. And so I went to the Shrouded in Darkness woods, and I didn't have a torch. I didn't have any way of lighting myself.
Pretty fucking cool.
So I'm just in the darkness trying to find my way around, right? And I find some torches and shit, and I eventually locate the shrine, but to get to the shrine, you have to have the ball, and the ball is in the hands of this big motherfucker.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. So I wake up the big motherfucker, take him out very easily, because I had a bunch of bomb arrows, and I bombed him to death, and then he was dead. I collected all his stuff. I did the shrine, and I went, well, that was it.
It was cool.
It was, I fought a big guy, and I unlocked a shrine.
Oh, that was cool.
I guess I got one more heart piece. I just didn't feel that strongly about it.
Yeah.
It was just a big guy battle, and, like, there seemed like a lot of those. Like, there's a big thing you can fight in the desert.
But it's another thing where it's like, how did you get to it, you know?
I mean, I just walked in. I mean, you can't really, like, fly into there, you know? It's a big, dark pit.
But how did you approach it? Where did you approach it from?
From the south. I just went in.
You just went... I didn't even know you could do that. Because I went around the edge of the world to the north. Which going around the edge of the world is, like, super cool, because it's like a fucking enemy battling gauntlet. And there's, like, all kinds of shit to do. Did you climb the big rock with the Gorons? Where it's like a race to the top of the rock?
I thought I would need more.
And climb
I figured I would probably need more stamina to do that, so I didn't attempt it.
That one's cool. And it's like you do that on the way, and then you go around, and then, like, if you approach that dark spot from the back, you have to, like, climb a tree and then fly onto the island. Mm-hmm. It was pretty cool. That's a cool thing about the game. You just can do it in all kinds of ways.
There's a lot of neat shit that I was like, man, if I wanted to spend 100 hours playing this game, I would do it. But, like, again, it's the fact that I wasn't forced to that meant I wouldn't. Yeah. It's like, I'm trying to think
of what... you gotta come back to it playing casually, you know, and just kind of go like, I'm gonna go do this,
okay.
You know?
What got me, even though I haven't beat Sekiro yet, because I am so fucking terrible at it, and I can't parry for shit, what made me get really engrossed in that game is that I was playing it fairly linearly up until I got to that boss that's like the midpoint boss, right? The guy who you have to fight on top of the tower. And I could not beat him. So I said, let me go try to find, you know, like if there's any items I could get, if there's any other way. And I end up finding these total branching paths that you can take. And I realized that there's like 8 different ways you can go. And just the act of being forced down all those pathways by not being good enough, by needing to grind, made me go and find everything. Every little fucking hidden thing.
Yeah.
I was scouring the levels for anything that would give me the power to do better against these bosses because it was so fucking hard. And, like, if it had been that way in Zelda, I'm sure I would have done that shit. I'm sure I would have gone, man, I cannot be... Because that was kind of what it was like at the very end. Because, again, the one boss that gave me trouble was the Gerudo boss. And, like, when I got to the Zora boss, I took a few tries. Rito, one try. The boss of Goron took me a few tries just because of the fact that I didn't realize you had to throw fucking bombs at it. It's not communicated very well. But, like, once I figured that out, it was nothing. And then you get to Gerudo boss, and, like, he's actually kind of hard, so it made me go, okay, let me go do some side quests, and, like, let me try to get stronger. And I thought that when I got to Ganon's castle, it would be the same story. Like, wow, I really can't do this. Let me go do a bunch of side quests. But, like, after attempting it a few times and getting kind of decently far in the fight, it was like, okay, I don't need to do that much side questing. Like, I can get away with a couple things. Again, I mean... This is just my experience. And I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying that this game is, like, bad because it didn't do these things. Yeah. I'm just talking about the fact that some people will play like me. And you can say I'm playing the game wrong or whatever. Like, I know there's going to be people who are fucking furious that I'm talking about the game this way. Yeah, I'm just letting you know.
There's going to be people who are more mad at my logic. People get really mad about me saying that there's an ideal way to play the game because most people like to fuck around in the mountains because most people like Skyrim.
The fact of the matter is that a game like this leaves a lot open, and I do think there's something to be said about... there's a lot of games where the most fun way to play it is not necessarily what was intended by the developers, is not necessarily what is the most obvious, is not necessarily what you're inclined to do. And if somebody has a better experience with the game because they played it weird, then I can't discount that. Yeah. Like, yeah, the game for you is better. And, like, I think this game would be better for me if I had just been forced to do more of it, or just encouraged to by the difficulty. Yeah. If I hadn't been able to climb so many mountains from so early on, I would have felt more need to go get more shrines. I would have said, oh, I don't have enough stamina, let me go find some secret shrines. If I had, had really struggled against bosses, I would have said, I don't have enough health, or I need to learn how to cook better. But it just wasn't like that. The game gave me so much freedom, and, I'm going to take advantage of that, and I don't know if that's a good thing. Like, even if I did enjoy the game, I don't think I got the most out of it that I could, or that it was designed the best way it could have been, because of these problems.
I think it's all about, it relies too much on self-motivation.
Yeah.
To accomplish certain tasks where, like, you're not really given that much incentive, because at a certain point you have enough hearts. You're not really motivated by hearts. You feel like you've got a ton of them,
And granted, a lot of games, like Minecraft, the only reason to play Minecraft is self-motivation. Yeah. You yourself decide you want to build a nice shelter. You get a creative idea in your mind and you go for it. And, like, I don't play Minecraft because I'm not that kind of player. I will not be compelled to do something just because the tools are there.
Like, there's a mechanic in this game that I think is really cool that I wish I could get super invested in, which is taking pictures of everything in the game.
Yes.
Because everything has, like, is take picturable, and there's a big, like, there's a big gallery that you're filling out of every fucking enemy and item and everything in the game.
Bestiary mechanic.
Yeah, a bestiary mechanic, but there's no incentive to do it.
No.
Like, if you play Metroid Prime, there's the same thing. You can scan everything in the game, and if you scan everything in that game, you scan it and it tells you what it is.
Yeah,
it tells you about the world. It gives you a story. In Zelda, it doesn't. You're just taking pictures of shit.
Oh my god, like, you just made me... Like, if that had been a thing, like, if you took a picture of it and it told you a list of its weaknesses and, like, what its personality is, I would have taken pictures of it.
It's a huge missed opportunity, because I think it's a really cool... Like, that's a whole other game. There's a whole Pokemon Snap game in Zelda, but... It doesn't reward you at all for doing that. There's no incentive whatsoever.
Aside from certain quests that require you to take pictures.
You have to be self-motivated to do that in the game, and there will not be a payoff when you do it,
Right. And, like, again, like we're saying, okay, I want to explain this, just broaden it out a little bit, because I understand why, again, I appreciate that this game gives you the tools that if you are self-motivated to do those things, I think that makes it a better game for those people. I am somebody who expresses myself creatively regularly, IRL. I don't need a video game to be the vehicle for that. Like, if I want to create something, I want to create something very specific that is to my taste, that says something about me.
Yeah.
And this game has a customizable experience, but not in a way that feels creatively fulfilling to me. And I understand even better, like a game like Minecraft, how in that game you can make things creative enough that I can see why people would get more invested in that. To me, it's too much effort, in service of getting something that you want. But like in this game, it's like, I think that pushing you into it would have been better. I'm repeating myself at this point on that regard, but like
there's more incentive,
Here's some things that are annoying. I don't mind weapon breaking, but why do you have so few weapon slots at the beginning?
Well, because you have to find 999 Korok seeds.
But
it takes a long time to...
Here's the thing. The reason it bothered me is that you almost always want to have a torch and a Korok leaf on you.
Yeah.
And I know that those things
are... It would be cool to have them, but I never had them because I wanted swords.
I always had a torch and a Korok leaf taking up 2 slots. So, weapon management is a pain in the ass because I'm constantly trying to... There's only one thing they needed to do to make me not care. Such a simple fix. If I open up a chest and there's a sword inside, bring up a prompt that lets me switch it with one of the ones in my inventory. Why would that not be a default?
That's a big problem.
That is so stupid. You open a chest and you da-da-da-da. Your inventory is full. Chest closes.
Yeah.
Plus R or LL. Fucking, all right, which one's the weakest one and which one has the lowest durability? Okay, I'll get rid of this one. Open the chest again. Ba-da-da-da. Yeah, I know. I already fucking did this. Why would they not? If it's one that's just on the ground, fine. In the heat of the moment, I probably don't want to be interrupted by a prompt. But if it's in a fucking treasure chest, you're going to undercut the drama of opening the treasure chest that hard. That is my biggest complaint about the game, that they didn't do that.
What would have been
so stupid.
Could have been really cool is if they either made something like torches and Korok leaves just a different item that doesn't diminish.
That also would have been
doesn't go in your slots. That would have been great. Or if they had it so at a certain, in a shrine, maybe instead of... Because the most disappointing thing ever is when you open a chest in a shrine and it's some fucking weapon you already have, Right. Maybe if you went into a shrine and unlocked a permanent Korok leaf, like a gold Korok leaf that never diminishes and gets its own slot, that would have been cool,
Yeah.
Reward you over time and make you feel like, oh, thank God I don't have to fucking manage my Korok leaves anymore because it's not something that you use all the time, It's just kind of taking up space most of the time, but you don't want to not have it because you want to be able to sail a boat if you find one. And there's usually one on the boat,
I mean, I didn't end up using the Korok leaves nearly as much as I thought I would.
Yeah.
It just seemed so necessary.
It seems important, and you don't know that you're going to find them absolutely everywhere,
How do you feel about the Sheikah powers?
Sheikah power, the bomb and the ice and the magnet.
Yes.
I don't know, they're all right.
In the context
they're not
of shrines,
as cool as regular Zelda items.
I think they're a lot of fun in the shrines. It's interesting because, in old Zelda games, then usually you would get to a dungeon, you would get a new item, and you basically just use it in that dungeon. Maybe there will be a puzzle in a later dungeon that uses it again. I liked that in this game you have a consistent set of powers that you're always finding new uses for, that you're always meant to think about.
They're meant to influence the world from the beginning.
And I prefer that in the dungeons, you don't just get some new power. You're using the ones you've already learned how to use. You're using, it's consistent with the mechanics of what you've been doing in the game. You're basically just in a super shrine. And if the shrines individually rewards you for exploring, this is rewarding you for doing a big explore. I like all that. In terms of using them in combat, it's just a little cumbersome. I think the game expects you to use them a lot more outside of shrines. particularly bombs. It seems like they expected you to use them all the time. There's a lot of different ways you could use like the stasis and the magnets and stuff, but like just the act of going through the menus to get them out and then having to aim, very specifically. I mean, it was just more hassle than I was willing to go through.
It's like, the magnets are hard in battle. Stasis can be pretty good. The bombs are easy because you just whip it out and then you drop it on the ground and run away,
Yeah, but you got to remember to press the detonate, and I could get real.
I think it'd be pretty helpful.
I feel like I blew up as many bombs on myself as I did on enemies in this game. Yeah. For just getting fucking tangled up in all the different buttons I'm trying, because I'm trying to get out a bomb, throw it, switch to a sword, detonate. You know, and like that's a lot of button presses, for an uncoordinated fuck like me.
Yeah.
All right, I think we covered all the general mechanics. So now the more unique mechanics, like cooking, horses, photography you already covered, and just the menus in general. Cooking, how do you feel about cooking?
I mean, it can be great if you really invest in it, I feel like the perfect way to play, because there's kind of an approach to this game where it feels like they anticipated if casual players wanted to play. Like, you can go and... Maybe your motivation in this game is just, I want to find every recipe,
Yeah.
You could play the whole... You don't have to do any of the plot or anything. You could play this game and be like, I'm Gordon Chef Ramsay, and I can just fucking make recipes all day. Goron Chef Ramsay. Yeah. Like, you don't have to play the story, and I think they wanted that, but they didn't think about the fact that it's like such an incredibly small percentage of people that's gonna realize that is a way that you can play this game and be gratified,
Well, it's funny you say that, because in that PCP episode that I mentioned, Ben was like, I really want to play that game, because it has like such robust mechanics like cooking, and I was like, oh my god, if Ben played this game, all he would do is cook.
Yeah, exactly.
He would spend the whole game scouring for every single item just to figure out what recipes they can be cooked into.
It's a game because
there's so many.
Yeah, it's a game for Shigeru Miyamoto, who just wants to climb trees all day.
Right, like you literally can see a shooting star fall in the distance. Yeah. And then you go to it, and there's a star fragment, and you pick it up, and it's like, sure, you could sell this for 300 rupees, but it can be cooked into something, and you're like, well, I guess I gotta combine it with everything in the game and figure out what I can cook it with.
But what would have been cool if they tied it in, like, maybe somewhere in a village there's a cooking school, and like that
would have been great.
There's a plot surrounding it, like if it were like in the Pokemon games where you have the cute contests or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, incorporate it like that, where it's like, okay, so now if I wanted to be a chef in this game, there's a goal for me to accomplish as a chef,
Yeah.
Not just, I'm cooking.
That's fucking a brilliant point.
Like, that would have been really cool. Like, oh, there's this town's all about cooking, and they have a cooking competition or something, or just something, Oh, there's a photography competition. Like, incorporate those other mechanics into the game in interesting ways.
There is one thing that's a little like that, and that's the horseback riding.
Yeah,
because
you do a little bit.
If you can basically just, if you find horses in the wild, you just mount them and train them.
Yeah.
There's somewhat, the mechanics are not that complex, but if you want to raise horses, you have to, you have to put some effort into it, try to get the best horse. There's like a racing mini game where you can like try to, test your mettle as a horseback rider.
But don't you kind of you're just racing a clock,
I don't know.
Wouldn't it have been cool to have like a race where you're racing 5 people?
Well, here's the thing.
That would have been neat.
As we've talked about, the horses, if you are not using them regularly, if you're just climbing mountains, you don't use them much. And like, the only times I got on my horse was when I was like specifically planning to go to a spot that was just across a big field, and I happened to be at a stable.
Did you find the Ganon horse?
I heard about it, but I didn't go to find it.
He's pretty cool, but he's really hard to get. That's like the ultimate horse challenge, if you get the big old horse.
What about the white horse? Because there's
the spirit guy?
There's one horse that's supposed to be... No, there's an all-white horse that was the one that you supposedly used 100 years ago.
I don't think I knew of that.
Because there's a statue of it where one of the memories is. It's next to this big horse statue, and it's supposed to be a statue of the horse that you guys had used. And like the memory shows the horse, and like Zelda's petting it and stuff.
I don't remember.
And I think the idea is that you're supposed to find that horse, and that's meant to be the one you use in the final battle with Ganon. Because it would be you reunited with your old horse.
Sick.
there's so much shit going on in this game. Like, I can't be very down on it. Like,
it's amazing. It's fantastic.
Just wish it was formatted differently, but there's so much shit, and that's why there's so much potential for the next game. Let's just jump right into what we want from Zelda.
Another thought on Breath of the Wild is that it's amazing, and every problem you have with the game is on what isn't there, not what is there. Most of the time.
Well, like
it's like the potential of what could have been is what brings it down, which is people's criticism of a lot of things in that vein. It's just like you're thinking about what it could have been and not what it is. What it is fantastic, you know?
Well, I think that what it is a game that was already built to be a great Zelda game, was changed to be something else entirely, and that something else was so enticing to people that is what they want. Like, you want the game to be what they changed it into, but they didn't rebuild it from the ground up around that. And so what we need the next game to be is that rebuilt version. The game that from the beginning was thinking, okay, we've seen the way people played Breath of the Wild, where they just fucking climbed mountains and did bullshit. So what if we designed the game around that? What if we took into account the fact that we want you to not be able to just climb around every fucking challenge in the game. And we build it so that you can't do that.
I hope it, because it does. When I beat Breath of the Wild, it felt like the first half of a story, you know? You feel like that, it feels like in Twilight Princess or Ocarina of Time, when you go through the first half of the game and there's a big change, you know?
I can see how you feel that.
It feels like the beginning of Ocarina of Time, where you're just going through collecting the stuff, and then you get to the real game, you know? So now they've announced a sequel. I'm hoping the sequel is that game, you know?
And I mean, it's in the Zelda tradition to have a multi-phasic world, to explore the same world, but everything's completely different. I want it to be like you said, like WoW Cataclysm, basically.
Exactly.
Earlier. Like, just destroy, not necessarily destroy. I mean, I would prefer it to be the opposite, the rebuilt world. You know, a world where there's just way more, the towns are way bigger, there's more towns, more people, more quest lines, more unique things going on. There are some things I've heard other people complain about with this game that did not bother me, like enemy variety. Some people have noted there's not a lot of different enemy types in this game. You know? I fought so few enemies that didn't bother me, because I didn't feel like I was fighting the same guys all the time. And like, I like that kind of consistency that like you always know how they're gonna fight, kind of. But I totally see why that could be a problem for other people. If you were engaged in the combat, you might get bored of fighting the same guys all the time, and or the shrines all being so similar. Like, it all depends on the way you're thinking about it.
And it's really, I think it's a strength of Nintendo and a strength of that team to do that, because if they tried to please everyone by making it too much, it would have gone to shit. It would have been a Kingdom Hearts 3 and taken 100 years to come out, and like they had to scale back on certain things to be able to give us everything they did. You know, they're just compromises have to be made. They're just a team of people making a game. Like, they focused on what they thought was important, and they said like, okay, you know, we'll limit the enemy variety. But it's not that important. You know,
I think I'm very happy they're making a sequel to this game, because I'm not a big sequels guy. I'm not somebody who generally wants a game to have a billion sequels that do the same thing over and over. This is just one of those games where, like you said, all the things that you don't like about it are just the potential. It's like, man, there's so much good about this game, and maybe if there wasn't a sequel, I might just play it for 10 more years and explore everything, and like, maybe I would even eventually consider it like a 10 out of 10 game, just from the sheer amount of experience I've had with it. But like, I know what could have been. I know, because I've played enough other games that, you know, that do some of the things right that this game did wrong. Like you said, with the Metroid Prime scanning versus the photography, big change that could have added a lot to this game. And I think it's just linearly a better idea than what we have. You know, I don't think there's much argument to be made that wouldn't make the game better, you know? And so, like, when you think about all those little things that you just know would make the game better, and then you go, God, if they manage to do that in the sequel, we will have a fucking amazing game.
Can't wait. It's gonna be nuts.
How do you feel about the trailer?
I mean, I was fucking coming loads everywhere, because it looks spooky. You've got Zelda has short hair, she looks banging,
and she's got like a princess braid, which is my favorite type of braid.
That's the best Zelda character design, hands down, of all time. She looks fantastic.
You think short hair is better than the long hair?
Yes,
Zelda?
way better. She's super, and it fits her personality better of this Zelda. What I'm hoping for is that you get to choose to play Zelda? As Link or Zelda in this game.
Ooh, that would be mega interesting.
That it's 2-player. I'm not sure, because you see in this trailer Link and Zelda getting separated, and I really want this game to just be about Zelda. That would be fucking cool as shit. If Link is separated and it's just about Zelda. If there was any time
they could get away with that, it would be the sequel.
It's a sequel to Breath of the Wild.
Oh, shit.
It would be incredible. I'm not going to get my hopes up because, who knows?
If they did it, though, it would be a genius idea.
I definitely think the spooky mummy that they were showing is Ganondorf, I think it's just going to be Ganondorf. I saw people saying, like, oh, I'm ready for a villain that's not Ganon. I'm like, this is going to be Ganondorf,
There's plenty of other Zelda villains. You got Vaati.
Yeah, but it looked like it would be Ganondorf.
What's the other guy's name from fucking Link to the Past?
All I know is I never in a million years would have thought they would actually do it. So I'm very excited.
What, the sequel?
I didn't think they'd do it, yeah.
I think I was under the impression they would, just because of the fact that it's such a new game.
And they spent so much time developing those mechanics, it would be a shame not to keep exploring them.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like, because the thing is that Zelda, I'm very proud of the fact that Zelda has escaped from the shadow of its former self. Yeah. And like, I made this video once expanding on some stuff that Matthew Matosis had said in his old Zelda reviews called how good ideas can hurt new ideas. Yeah. Where Ocarina of Time was such a good game that they could not bear to not do it basically the same way over and over again. And like they made a lot of adjustments. All the Zelda games are different. They all have unique feel. Anybody who says they're all the same thing clearly hasn't played them all. There's a lot different about them. They all have a different vibe and energy. But like to me, I do think like I look at Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword specifically as the games that are uninteresting because they're too much like the games that came before. I think that Twilight Princess was just an attempt to make a bigger, badder version of Ocarina of Time, and I don't like the way that they went about doing that, personally. I know you do.
I just think it's let's take Ocarina of Time and explore it even more. Like, those mechanics can just get to the fucking depth of it, Make
if you say so.
A bigger, more complete, more robust game.
If you say
more
so.
to do.
I haven't, I admittedly haven't played that far in it.
You just gotta get through the threshold. And that's the biggest shame, is that you can't ignore how slow the beginning of the game is.
It's unbelievable.
You just can't ignore it. And like, the Forest Temple is good. The fire temple there in
fire
the
temple
Goron
sucks.
Temple. No,
you spin the whole
magnet battles.
Most of the
cool.
temple is you walking very slowly on walls with magnet shoes. It sucks.
Nah, it was great.
I went the wrong way.
Better
better spend 7 minutes walking back around.
So much great shit in that game.
Anyway, this is not a video about Twilight Princess.
Yeah, this is not even good.
But
I love Twilight Princess.
But yeah, I think that Breath of the Wild represents taking things in a new direction. And like, it is, if there's ever a Zelda game that deserved a sequel, it was this one, especially when there's so much that could easily be fixed just by taking a different mentality towards the game, by looking at it through the lens of, okay, this time we're building the game around the mechanics that we've established.
I hope they just they take some of the, like, what was good about the older games and incorporate it into what is good about this game and combine it into the perfect Zelda game,
I just hope
like,
they don't,
if they took, like, say, so it has the same overworld. Yeah. Let's add 7 dungeons into that overworld where they would logically be. And then have dungeons.
I'm okay with adding in dungeons, but like, I hope that not too much of what they do is out of fans' complaints about it not being like the older Zelda.
I wouldn't want that,
because like, there's a lot of people whose biggest complaint is like, there's too few dungeons and they're too short, and like, that only enters your mind because you're comparing it to other Zeldas. Yeah. That like, because the dungeons were the highlight of previous Zelda games, but the dungeons just aren't the highlight of this game, and they don't need to be. And like, I enjoyed them for what they are. Do I think they could have been longer? Sure. Do I think they could have had more gameplay styles. Like, I like that it's still using the same mechanics that you've had throughout the game, but maybe there could have been more Sheikah mechanics.
I mean,
there's only 6 of them.
And they could have explored those way further than they do. Like, they do a lot of exploration. They don't build any crazy puzzles. I mean, there are some crazy puzzles in the shrines, but it always feels like stage 1 of what should have been a 3-part, like, real escalation of these puzzles.
I mean, I would say that if it was just the same type of dungeons, but if they pushed you a little harder to think more or, like, do something really unique with the powers, it was rare that I got stumped. I did a couple times, but, you know, it wasn't, like, a long thought process. But, I just don't... I know there's a lot of people whose main complaints have to do with their expectations on the basis that it's a Legend of Zelda game. I don't want them to make changes to make it more like old Zelda. I want them to make changes that take this format and make it better. I think we've said all that there possibly could fucking be to say about Breath of the Wild. Perhaps. We've been going for nearly 3 hours.
The definitive Breath of the Wild podcast.
Discussion.
We're coming for Joseph
cast.
Anderson's ass.
Do you watch his videos?
I do.
How
is simultaneously I hate him and I love him at the same time because he's the most petty fucking dude on the planet. But also he goes in.
Fucking Matthew Matosis's Breath of the Wild video was
Matthew
saintly.
Matosis too. Maybe I'm thinking of his video.
His was like 40 minutes long.
Anyways, I think they both did big-ass Breath of the Wild videos.
Well, now we've got a big-ass Breath of the Wild video that's rambling and goes in circles for about 3 hours. But hopefully you enjoyed some of our takes, our unique impressions. Because I had never heard anybody talk about the topography of the game the way that I did. And that's why I wanted to do a video about it.
I feel like we gave some unique takes. And that's what matters.
All right, everybody. Plug yourself. What do you do? Is there anything you want people to see on the internet?
Vic and Hope, they can watch that. I don't want
the
to see
Vic and Hope
else.
Let's Play channel, which you've been watching in the background here. You don't want to plug like your Instagram or Twitter or something?
No.
No?
I'm off the grid. I'm not on the internet.
Okay.
Don't look for me.
As for me, you can become a patron, and you'll get, for $1, access to my Patreon Discord. For $5, you get to hear podcasts me and my fiance do every 2 weeks, reviewing everything we did. For $15, you get a rant, and for $40, you get a care pack that I mail to you. Is there anything else I need to plug? I have a Twitter, but I don't care if you follow it.
Patreon.
I just did
Patreon.com/Ben Saint.
No.
If you want to support me.
No. All right, everybody. See you in the next one.